Welcome to This Dumb Week, a weekly live Twitter space hosted by Alex Marinos and yours truly, Dr. RollerGator. Available in podcast form on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible, iHeartRadio, and others. Alex, welcome back. Have you had a sufficiently dumb week?
Well, no, but I have been having my withdrawal symptoms from this podcast, so I thought I'd dial in.
Well, that's good. Well, I mean, let me just say, holy shit. Did you miss some things going on in the United States? It's been an explosive situation over here, sir. I don't know if you caught any wind of it out there over in Greece.
I heard something about explosive diarrhea in a prior episode.
Yes,
I'm not sure if that's what you're referring to.
Now, is it true that you've been in Greece protesting the lack of Greek representation in the Odyssey this week? Is that what you've been doing over there right now?
Man, don't even get me started. I just can't.
Okay.
Every fucking relative. It's I've been on the side of like, guys, she's not appearing that much. The Black Helen of Troy is really throwing people in for a loop.
Okay, all right. Well, there has been very little.
Like, just accept. Just let it pass over you. Sort of don't get wrapped around the axle. This is just how it goes, and it's
all right.
Yeah.
Well, we're gonna get started here.
The produce is gonna kill us. It's never a recall on the candy. The candy. There's never a recall on like the double blasted gushers. It's never a recall on the ultimate choco tacos. Like, no, this is the produce right now that is tearing us up. It's bad. It's so bad that the news, you know the news, where you get your news. The news came out and said, hey, everybody over here eating well. Everybody here eating right, eating your fruits and vegetables, watch out because there's a parasite and it gives you, and I quote, explosive diarrhea. They didn't say upset stomach. They didn't say bowel issues. They went straight to top of the list, top number one. They didn't even do the thing that our drug commercials do at the end where they're like, they said, loud and proud, explosive diarrhea. And when I say they, I actually mean all of them. All of them. All of them said it. Fox News, ABC, CBS, everybody said it. One Nation News, like America Now, like everybody said it. Explosive diarrhea. They all said it. The same people who can't agree on the results of the 2020 election all said explosive diarrhea. Do you know how bad it must be? Do you know how bad it must be for everyone to bipartisan, explosive? I didn't think this would be what brought us together. I really didn't. I thought that's just how serious this is. It doesn't matter where you are in like the spectrum or the constellation of political opinion. It doesn't matter if you're progressive or conservative or liberal or alt-right. You might even be a Nazi. Everybody's like, that's explosive diarrhea.
Now to that cyclospora outbreak linked to iceberg lettuce. The CDC says the outbreak has expanded to 4 more states and sickened thousands. And in the weeks following the initial report, some consumers are expressing confusion about what is safe and what is not. CBS's Allie Bauman is in New York with what you need to know. Allie.
Jerika, Illinois, Kansas, Oklahoma, and Pennsylvania now join 5 other states linked to contaminated lettuce that has sickened thousands. The expansion comes days after federal health officials said the outbreak is under control.
And we've identified the source of the outbreak.
Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. tried to calm concerns of the cyclospora outbreak.
Is anyone else deathly afraid to eat lettuce right now?
But some Americans aren't convinced. Social media users calling it Lettucegate. Federal health officials announced the cyclospora outbreak linked to iceberg lettuce served at Taco Bell locations has now spread to 4 new states. Nearly 2,000 people have gotten sick. Health officials believe the affected iceberg lettuce came from a Taylor Farms facility in central Mexico. The supplier says it has suspended production of all its products in that region. The Mexican government rules out any contamination, claiming its test found no evidence of the parasite at Taylor Farms.
I don't think we can say that this is under control yet.
Health officials suspect multiple outbreaks across 41 states with more than 11,000 reported and confirmed cases. There's no sign of slowing, as symptoms can take up to 2 weeks to start.
Even if this lettuce was implicated, it doesn't mean that other produce is not implicated as well.
Data suggests Taco Bell saw about a 30% drop in foot traffic after health officials identified the chain as part of this outbreak. Jerika, Taco Bell says it has removed affected lettuce from its restaurants.
Yeah, very serious outbreak. Allie Bauman, thank you.
Taco Bell stepped up and they were like, you know what? We don't know if it's our supplier. We don't know who it could be. So you know what? We're not going to serve it anymore, because also Taco Bell knew their clientele. That's also what happened. Taco Bell knew that if you rolled up into Taco Bell and you ordered the double wubba crunch wrap, and they were like, actually, we're out of lettuce, that not a single Taco Bell customer would be like, no lettuce? That's why I come to Taco Bell for the lettuce. How am I supposed to get my greens if Taco Bell doesn't have any lettuce?
So, Alex, a couple of weeks ago when I covered that outbreak initially, people were a little bit like, why are you focused on this situation? And then about 3 days later, it was one of the most talked about national discussions. Wall-to-wall coverage on the news.
Give it time. Give it time.
I may be early, but I'm not wrong. So, you being safe in Greece, far away from the deadly lettuce.
I mean, the whole Nazis with explosive diarrhea thing gives brown shirts a whole other meaning.
Oh, right out the gate, sir. Good. You've exercised your reflexes there. Excellent work, sir. I'm very proud of you.
You have no idea. I've reconnected to the source.
Oh, how so? Just visiting home?
My brother is really the punster in the family. I'm just sort of a pale imitation.
Okay, all right. So
I've been hanging out.
You're an understudy. You're an understudy of
yes, very much so.
The joke master. All right. Well, moving on to some of the throwaway news of the week.
Take a look at that thumbs up. The man appeared to be in good spirits despite being stranded inside this massive truck stop sign for hours. Fire officials say the worker was doing maintenance near the Lorenzo Road exit off I-55 in Wilmington when that lift that got him up there experienced a problem. That happened around 11 Tuesday morning. The sign stands about 130 feet tall and has no ladder, which proved to be an issue for responding fire crews, whose ladders only reach about 100 feet tall. Crews initially struggled to find equipment tall enough to reach him. They eventually found a specialized lift at a job site in Joliet, and Illinois State Police escorted it to Wilmington. About 5 hours after he became trapped, the worker was seen getting into a crane basket and was brought safely back down.
I don't know about you, Alex, but getting stuck 130 feet up in the air inside of a sign is not my idea of a good day spent.
There was an epic image. I don't know if it made its way across the pond of Boris Johnson, former Prime Minister of the UK, while he was Mayor of London, stuck. I think he did some kind of a stunt where they lifted him up in the air and then he got stuck there. So you got Bojo with a helmet hanging from a crane for an uncomfortable amount of time.
No, I've never seen that. So he was mayor prior to being prime minister. I'm assuming that's the order of operations.
Mayor of London. I'll pin something.
How many prime ministers have they had since Boris Johnson? It's like 4 now, right? Like they really are.
I believe the tally, just to give the British word for it, over the last 4 years is 7 prime ministers.
7. So Theresa May was the one who
Republic-esque and accelerating. The rate of prime ministers is
Theresa May succeeded him, right? She was the direct successor to Boris Johnson.
You had
right?
David Cameron. David Cameron.
All right.
I believe Boris Johnson won the next election,
mm-hmm.
or Theresa May after that.
Yeah.
Or was it Theresa May? No, I think Theresa May won the election, and then Boris Johnson took her seat. Then he had to resign because of Partygate. And they got Rishi Sunak, who then called and lost. No. Of course, how could I forget? There was Liz Truss in the middle, who lasted less than a head of lettuce.
All right.
Any connection to the Taco Bell situation, it's completely accidental. Then you had Rishi Sunak. Then you had Never Hear Cure, as he was called in the US, in the UK, because he was constantly flying over to Ukraine. Keir Starmer, and now you've got Andy Burnham. I don't know if that's the whole set, but I think I'm pretty close.
All right. Well, yeah, that's they've been churning through them. That's you're not long for this world if you're a prime minister of the United Kingdom. That's apparently sure. Now, this next piece of news, Alex, is actually somewhat along a similar path, not necessarily as intensely interesting from a advanced technological standpoint, from artificial intelligence, quote unquote, but it's a sort of an archival discovery, something that's been a mystery for many decades that has just recently been solved with some recent advancements in technology.
In the deep waters off Puerto Rico, a 74-year-old mystery finally solved.
Oh, stop! My God. Oh my God! Is that a plane? That's a plane.
There, 2,000 feet below the surface, sonar and high-def images of the instantly recognizable Pan Am logo, of a landing gear and a tail.
Done deal. That is an engine. That is a full engine.
That is.
And the shiny, bright aluminum fuselage resting on the ocean floor.
Oh my God, there's writing. It's her.
It says Clipper Endeavor.
This morning, in a Today Show exclusive, the Discovery Channel team is announcing Clipper Endeavor has been found. So this plane was coming here to New York, right?
Yeah, to what's now JFK, and it was Good Friday.
Yeah, people were flying up here from Puerto Rico for the Easter weekend.
Pan Am Flight 256 left San Juan, Puerto Rico on April 11th, 1952. On board, 69 passengers and crew. But shortly after, the pilots lost both right side engines. 9 minutes later, the plane crashed. But in 1952, there were no flight attendant safety briefings.
There was no demonstration of where the exits were, where the flotation devices are. And so in all of that chaos and all that panic, 52 people drowned in and around this plane.
17 people survived. In the dark depths of the Atlantic, the plane lost for 7 decades.
It was really out of reach in 1952. And it really took until now for the technology to catch up, to be able to reach down.
Then last month, Josh and Russ were offered one of the world's most advanced autonomous underwater drones, normally used for surveying gas and mineral fields. They had just 2 days to search.
We were against the clock on this, and we had kind of an idea, a pretty nice search box that we wanted to search.
It took only one pass.
Oh, God. That's a plane. Whoa. That's look at that. Oh, my God.
The haunting images of an icon of American travel, the final resting place for 52 people, and a crash that changed aviation safety forever, as the government soon ordered pre-flight safety briefings for every plane.
Whether you're going on vacation, going home for the holidays, or you're a business traveler, every time you set foot on a plane, you owe a debt to what happened to Clipper Endeavor.
Yeah, so while the Navy and the Coast Guard knew the general area where the plane went down, wreckage, of course, can shift and drift in the ocean. They didn't know the precise location. And now they do. Chanel and Willie, back to you.
Yeah, I mean, the moment they spot the plane, it just gives you chills there, seeing that. So now that they've located the plane, Tom, what comes next?
Well, they've told the governor's office in Puerto Rico about the find. Right now, there are no memorials to the victims in Puerto Rico, but the tragedy did inspire some songs there. One of the survivors, who was a nurse who helped people get off the plane back then, she's 102 years old now.
Wow.
And she says she's happy to hear that the plane's exact location has actually now been pinpointed. So this is going to be on the Discovery Channel. Expedition Unknown will air in the fall, and we're grateful that they offered to share their findings with us.
Can't wait to see that. What an incredible story. Tom, thanks so much.
Thank you, Tom. Hey, thanks for watching. And don't forget.
So yeah, that's pretty fascinating. Someone's still alive to have been at that event going like, oh wow, they finally found that plane. Cool. 102 years old.
Nice. I have attached multiple photos. I couldn't stop myself.
Okay. All right.
Of Boris Johnson, including a GIF. Being stuck on a zip line. Apparently, it happened in 2012 at the Olympics. If you see the photos, you'll understand why they're emblematic.
Okay.
There's no, you can't out Bojo the Bojo. It's
gotcha.
Unbelievable.
Now, I failed to get the clip to go along with that Pan Am story because it sparked my memory. But do you remember about let's say a decade, somewhere in that arena, about a decade ago, a plane went missing and nobody really knows exactly where it landed. They where it crashed or whatever, somewhere over.
VMH.
Yeah.
The Malaysian Air one.
Yes, that's the one I'm referring to.
I have. It might shock you to hear that I've delved a little into that.
Well, with these underwater drones helping them find this Pan Am flight, I'm wondering if they can get a narrow enough hypothesis landing space, crashing space. Could they perhaps search in there? Is the depth of the water shallow enough that they can use this drone search technique? But I was reminded that during that period where nobody exactly knew where it was, nobody had enough details as to even really a extremely narrow region at the time where it might have crashed, there was speculation abound. And Don Lemon on CNN had speculated that perhaps it went through a wormhole. And I failed to pull the clip up. I forgot.
No.
Oh, yes.
Are you for real?
Yes, I'm for real. Absolutely. You think I'm lying about that, sir? You think I'm fibbing about Don Lemon?
I've got dueling premises here. The story is just insane enough that it's getting me just to the point where I'm willing to believe you might be pulling my leg.
Oh, now come on, sir.
Not sure.
Absolutely not.
I know you would never, but then again.
Hang on, let me see if I can grab it real quick while I have it in my mind here. See, Don Lemon wormhole, does it In 22. Okay, so the automatic answers from Bing here, the automatic co-pilot search that it just returned here. In 2014, CNN anchor Don Lemon made a widely ridiculed claim during a discussion about Malaysia Airlines flight MH370. He suggested that the missing flight might have flew into a black hole. The remark was quickly dismissed.
Now that he has editorial freedom, being an independent YouTuber and whatnot, he has all the freedom to explore his hypotheses with a man not being, over his shoulder. Surely.
Well, let's see here. I'm looking for a clip here real quick to see if I can get the audio of it, but I'm not going to waste too much time on that. But yeah, so he totally speculated that maybe it fell into a black hole, and he says, now that sounds preposterous, but is it preposterous? And it's like, yes, Don, it is preposterous to think that it fell into a black hole.
And let's not forget about the racism here. I mean, why black hole?
Oh,
Don.
I see. You're correct. Hang on. I got it.
What if it was hijacking or terrorism or mechanical failure or pilot error? But what if it was something fully that we don't really understand? A lot of people have been asking about that, about black holes and on and on and on and all of these conspiracy theories. Let's look at this. Noah says, what else can you think about? Black hole, Bermuda Triangle. And then Deji says, just like the movie Lost. And of course, they're also referencing the Twilight Zone, which has a very similar plot. That's what people are saying. I know it's preposterous, but is it preposterous, you think, Mary?
Is it? Yes, Don, it is. It is preposterous.
Yes, in general, my rule of thumb, I don't know about yours, Gator, is, but whenever you're positing new physics to explain just a sort of event that has really any other explanation, you're probably wrong.
So yeah,
programmers among you would among us, I suppose, will know this as no. It's not the compiler that's wrong; it's your code. Phenomenon.
All right, now next piece of let's say not extremely important news that happened this week here. Powerball ticket sales begin Tuesday in the United Kingdom. Powerball ticket sales in the United Kingdom will begin Tuesday, giving players across the Atlantic a chance at winning the same massive jackpot that U.S. players already play for with the same minuscule odds. The expansion, first announced in April through an agreement between the Multi-State Lottery Association in the U.S. and Allwin UK, will mark the first time a lottery outside of the U.S. contributes to the Powerball jackpot. The expansion will allow UK players to play for much larger jackpots than are now available at lotteries in the country and Europe. Wednesday night's drawing will be the first Powerball drawing to open to players in the UK. The largest Powerball payout was just over $2 billion from a ticket bought in 2022 in California. Euro Millions, a lottery offered across 9 European countries and also operated in the UK by Allwin, awarded the maximum 250 million euros, about $285 million, to players from France, Ireland, and Austria over the course of 2025. The odds of winning a Powerball jackpot are a minuscule 1 in 292.2 million. Those odds will be the same for US and UK players, lottery officials say. The U.S. lottery officials say the expanded player base will allow Powerball jackpots to grow more quickly, likely increasing sales as more people are drawn to larger and larger grand prizes. Powerball tickets cost $2. Tickets purchased in the UK will only go toward the Powerball jackpot, not lower tier prizes. Players in the UK will have a different lower tier prize structure. The estimated jackpot amounts in each country will differ due to currency conversion rates and because the US advertises prize amounts pre-tax, unlike the UK. UK Powerball jackpots will also be paid over 30 years, whereas the US jackpot winners have a choice between taking their winnings spread over years through an annuity or in cash. Nearly all winners opt for cash. Powerball is played in 45 US states and Washington, D.C., Puerto Rico, and the US Virgin Islands. In the game, players choose 5 white ball numbers from 1 to 69 and 1 red Powerball number from 1 to 26. Drawings will continue to be held Mondays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays. So the Powerball game is expanding, Alex, and you know, when I looked at the current Powerball total here, the current prize offering, it was something like $454 million as the grand prize. And let me tell you, after learning that, Elon Musk was just recently a trillionaire, Is $454 million that exciting anymore? Is it really?
Do you even get out of bed for less than $1 billion?
Well, that's a funny idiosyncrasy of mine. Okay, this is a very quirky idiosyncrasy of mine. I have a condition that I've identified that I'm going to call leading number bias. Okay, so if you tell me the prize is $1 billion, I'm going to emotionally feel less impressed than if you tell me it's 900 million. The leading number portion of the way that the number is described to me is what gets me aroused more than anything else. So I understand intellectually $1 billion is more than $900 million, but the 900 is larger than 1. So my emotional reaction.
Sonically, billion and million are very close.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
which is that's another factor.
That is an idiosyncrasy of mine, something that my natural body reacts to in an illogical fashion that I'm just, for transparency's sake, letting everybody know that I suffer from.
It's that and mathematical errors that your body responds violently to.
Yeah, occasionally, yes. Now, Alex, you'll be interested to know that the D4VD case, one of your most favorite followed cases that we've discussed over the year, is having some preliminary hearings this week where they are, if you recall, and I will give a background summary on this case for everyone else. But Alex, if you recall, they did not get an indictment to go after Mr. D4VD. They did a probable cause arrest. So they are in court this week in preliminary hearings to establish probable cause in order to get the court case to move forward for a trial for murder. Now, for those of you not familiar, D4VD, whose real name is David Anthony Burke, is a 21-year-old singer who exploded onto the music scene in 2022 with viral hits like Romantic Homicide and went on to sign a major record deal. By early 2025, his career was taking off. Then in September 2025, police made a gruesome discovery. A Tesla registered to Burke had been sitting in an impound lot for months after being towed. Workers eventually noticed a foul odor coming from the vehicle. Inside the front trunk, investigators found the decomposed and dismembered remains of a 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez. The discovery kicked off an investigation that lasted several months. In April of 2026, Burke was arrested and charged with first-degree murder, continuous sexual abuse of a child under 14, and unlawfully mutilating human remains. He has pleaded not guilty to every charge. According to prosecutors, Burke has been involved in a secret sexual relationship with Celeste that began when she was around 13 years old, and they allege that it may have started even earlier. They contend that as Burke's music career exploded, Celeste threatened to expose the relationship, creating what prosecutors described as the motive for the killing. They allege he murdered her to protect his career and silence potential witnesses. Those allegations remain unproven and will be ultimately decided at trial. After his arrest, prosecutors outlined what they say to be an extensive body of physical and digital evidence. They allege Burke purchased items including chainsaws, body bags, an inflatable pool, and other cleanup supplies shortly after the alleged killing. Searches of his home reportedly uncovered some of those items, along with blood evidence that investigators say is linked to the victim. Prosecutors have also described recovering text messages, location data, financial records, and other forensic evidence they believe reconstructs the events surrounding her death. The defense disputes the prosecution's interpretation of that evidence. The preliminary hearing is now underway. It's not the trial itself. It's the purpose to simply determine whether prosecutors have presented enough evidence for the case to proceed to trial. Over the course of the hearing, investigators have been presenting witnesses, forensic evidence, digital records, and testimony supporting the prosecution's theory of the case. Defense has been challenging the evidence and arguing that it is insufficient or open to other interpretations. The judge finds probable cause. The case will move to a full criminal trial where a jury, not the judge in the hearing, would determine Burke's guilt or innocence. Prosecutors have also indicated they are considering to seek the death penalty based on the special circumstance allegations, although no final decision has yet been announced. So that's the preliminary summary for everyone who may not be familiar with D4VD and this murder case. And now we can get to some of the updates from the preliminary hearings this week.
we were hearing testimony from an LAPD criminologist. This was one of the officers called to investigate after the Tesla was towed to one of their tech centers. So we were looking at photos the prosecutor was showing the court of 11 different air fresheners that were found in that Tesla. I mean, Celeste's remains had been in there decomposing, likely for months. So to cover up that smell, somebody put nearly a dozen air fresheners, not just inside the car, but actually in the front trunk.
Yeah.
And that's where the cadaver bags with her remains were found. So it's not just that this crime was committed, it's that somebody went to truly horrifying lengths, Jesse, to try and cover up their tracks. I could see her parents kind of shrinking into themselves and moving a little bit closer together when those photos came up. There's so many elements of this that are horrifying in ways I don't think we can fully imagine for them. So I'm curious to see what their attorney, what their wrongful death attorney, who's not actually involved in this criminal case, what he has to say to us later today. We chatted briefly upstairs. It sounds like he is going to take more questions from us later today.
When you think about, like, this is someone who was set to make millions. He was already making millions of dollars, but like with this new album that was coming out, he was set to make a lot of money. And you think about that, you know, really, if he's convicted of this, that is all gone. And yet he just has this demeanor about him that I think is surprising to a lot of people. You would also think his attorneys have probably prepared him to how to act, how he should act as this preliminary hearing goes on. You know, as far as today, Julia, inside the courtroom, there was a lot of evidence talking about what could be presumed as blood. Inside the Tesla, in the garage, there's this blue star technology. And if you've seen pictures of it in other cases, you have kind of this blue splatter on the wall after they put a chemical down. And they say that that is presumably where blood once was. Of course, when you think of Celeste, her remains were allegedly found in the front trunk of this Tesla. But that's not the only place where law enforcement is now alleging where they found blood in the car. What stood out to you about that part of the testimony today?
That's right. That was the key part of the testimony today from the prosecution's witnesses. So we did start wrapping up testimony from yesterday relating to financial management and just how much money David was making. And then we heard from a CHP officer who testified about where Celeste's passport ID was found months after her body was found. That was up in Santa Barbara County. And then we heard from two LAPD staffers. They are criminalists. One was the primary criminalist who processed the scene with the Tesla, and the other was involved in the search of David's house up in the Hollywood Hills a couple days after the body was found on September 17th of last year. So this is what was new and what was really interesting, Chris. We haven't heard about this detail before. According to this testimony from one of those two LAPD criminalists, there was actually blood identified in the brick flooring underneath where a car would have been parked. And that was underneath black rubber mats that were laid down on the garage floor in David's house. So what they seem to be painting a picture of here is blood leaking out of David's Tesla, seeping through those rubber floor mats and then seeping down into that brick flooring. Hearing that, you know, and sitting right behind the victim's parents, it was jarring. There is so much evidence in this case that has been unsettling in truly shocking ways that I don't think I've experienced before anywhere. But being, you know, in that courtroom with the victim's parents, I think that drives home the point that this is about a human, this is about a teenager, this is about a girl who was killed and dismembered. This is about justice for her.
It really is. And I keep thinking since yesterday about just that moment that I know you witnessed in person of these images that were put up on the screen of Celeste remains and what they found. And not just as jarring as it must have been for you, the members of the media, the members of the public who were in the courtroom, but like here are her parents who were private people before all of this. And I know her civil attorney has talked about that. These were not, people who were in the limelight prior to all of this happening. And then suddenly you're in the center of this case about your daughter, and then you're looking at these images up on the screen. And some of the evidence that's been brought out too, kind of going back to that Tesla, was today about air fresheners. And there were 11 air fresheners that were found, which that's a lot of air fresheners to have in your car, to be blunt.
Yeah.
How did that tie into what prosecutors seem to be laying out about how that vehicle was used in what they're accusing David of doing?
I'm glad you bring that up, because that was what really stood out to me, Chris, during testimony from the first LAPD criminalist we heard from today. There were at least 11 air fresheners found in that Tesla by the time this criminalist was called out to the Piper technical scene where the car was towed to from the Hollywood tow yard. At least 11. And here's the detail that caught my attention about where in the car those air fresheners were found. They were not just in the interior. They found them in the center console. They found them in the back seats. They also found air fresheners in the front trunk. So this isn't just about how Celeste was killed, how her body was then mutilated. This is also about the cover-up efforts. I mean, somebody must have noticed, oh, it smells terrible. We got to do something to cover that up. So somebody actually opened up the front trunk.
Is the court going to determine that there is sufficient evidence to support these charges for this case to move forward against David? Like I said, a lot to get into. Let's jump in. Okay, so let's talk about the substance. So the first witness back on the stand was this criminalist, right? And being questioned by the defense. What happened there?
Well, so we ended yesterday with cross-examination of an LAPD criminalist. She was the one who was called to process evidence found in David's garage. And that evidence included everything from trash bags to rubber floor mats to bloodstains. She was the one who tested chainsaws found in David's house. This was just about a week after the car was found in the Hollywood tow yard with the victim's remains in the front trunk, of course. So they continued with that cross-examination, and there was a lot of back and forth about the chainsaws. And here's why. Defense attorney Blair Burke noted there was no positive test indicating the possibility of blood on those chainsaws, so she kept on asking this LAPD witness for the prosecution why they didn't take those chainsaws into evidence. It sounded like she wanted to make the point that touch DNA, which they didn't test for, may have indicated something else, may have painted a more comprehensive picture of what exactly happened and who may have been involved, who else may have been involved, that is. But the criminalist was very sharp, very clear with her answers. At one point yesterday, she even brought her notes back out to make sure that she gave precisely the information that was documented during this investigation. So she said there did not appear to be any kind of forensic value to those chainsaws that were found in the garage, and that's why they were not taken into evidence. So my big takeaway from all of this is that perhaps those were not the weapons or tools used for dismemberment, even though they were found in David's garage during this search.
So, Alex, there's a lot going on in that situation there. They're working on getting the probable cause to move forward to a trial. I'm going to take the bet that they're going to get it because there's just so much, at least circumstantial evidence for them to move forward to say they have reasonable, a probable cause that this person is involved. Whether they'll get a conviction with some of that, maybe, I don't know. If the chainsaws were part of the evidence but don't wind up becoming part of the evidence, they'll need more to discuss how she was supposedly dismembered on the property. I'm a little confused over the claims about how the blood would have gotten underneath of a mat like that and seeped into brick. But perhaps that's just a unfleshed out articulation of what they're alleging might have happened with the blood there. Now, I would have to say, though, Alex, if you go to the extreme lengths, let's pretend in a morbid fashion that what they're engaged in is problem solving, right? This woman is going to possibly spoil his career by outing him as having a relationship with her while she was underage, and therefore putting him into the law's eyesights and ruining his possible future career. And that's a problem that needs solved, and they're engaged in a problem-solving process, and they're like, okay, well, we're going to kill her. Okay, well, now we need to get rid of the body. It's easier to get rid of the body if we dismember the body, and et cetera, et cetera. At the point that you start thinking, okay, how many air fresheners do we need in order to make sure that the decomposing body doesn't alert anybody to the stench? Is 11 the number that you would stop at if air fresheners were your solution to that problem?
Well, I must say I am impressed because I think as we've been discussing this case, I have been saying, like, what were they thinking? I mean, obviously, abandoning a body in a car, surely somebody will smell this. But no, they had countermeasures. 11 of them. So, you know, there was some thinking there. But imagine hanging the entirety of your career and the effectiveness of 11 air fresheners.
Yes.
I don't know, man.
Yes. Well,
I
listen,
would go higher. I'd go higher. Let's just say.
If all of the air fresheners were something like Pine Fresh, you know, maybe someone walks by and goes, "Oh, that must be a new air freshener scent, Pine Fresh plus decaying bear." Like, you know, that's the only way that you're going to really get away with that, because I think the decay is still going to seep into the pine freshness of those air fresheners.
In that abandoned, perfect condition Tesla.
Oh man, what a messed up situation.
Surely nobody is going to want to recycle the battery of or something.
What a completely messed up situation, Alex. Holy God. Now, moving.
It does. I'm not kidding. It does answer the question of, like, what, you know, how did they think they were going to get away with it? They literally bet it all on 11 packages of air freshener.
Yeah. Well, and an abandoned Tesla that would never be looked into. I guess they were hoping perhaps that it would just wind up being crushed into a cube. You know, one of those situations.
Yeah, well, I guess. I mean, if you're going by the movies, you know, you believe the ads on the effectiveness of air freshener and the movies on what happens to abandoned cars. So,
just destroyed by advertising and television propaganda. That's.
Thank God David didn't have access to LLMs. That would surely have given him better ideas.
True. Yeah. Well, going towards another story that we covered with a little bit of an update. Alex, do you recall a couple months ago, we looked at a story that was out of New Mexico where pretty much like an entire police department was being arrested because they were engaged in a long-running multi-decade DWI scam where they were entrapping. So the story here, for those who the first time you're hearing of this, in New Mexico, there have been a recent sting operation done by like the FBI and things like that to find this conspiracy that was been running for many decades, where what police would do is effectively entrap someone to drive drunk. So they'd be at a bar with this person, having drinks, and maybe they ask this guy to give them a ride home. So the person who is now inebriated gives them a ride home. Another officer comes and pulls them over for driving under the influence, and then, you know, arrests them for that crime. A attorney friend would be whom they reference. The attorney basically extorts them for several $1,000s, promising to get them off. If they pay the several $1,000s to hire this attorney, the attorney then tells the police officer who arrested him, okay, I've gotten the money. The police officer who arrested him finds a convenient way to not show up at one of the first hearings, so there's nothing to move forward with. Very interesting scam that's been running for decades, and they finally started arresting these people. And Alex, we do have some interesting updates on that story.
13 people, most of them former cops, admitted to their roles in the massive DWI corruption scheme. Our investigative team uncovered case after case, revealing how dozens of people were targeted and exploited in the scheme that spanned 3 decades. Today, little to no information is being shared with those who were targeted by this corruption, something attorneys say they are entitled to by law. KRQE investigative reporter Gabrielle Burkhart shows you why the victims are crying foul over their long wait for justice.
Nearly 3 years later, and the fear still lingers.
I was scared, you know. I still am sometimes. Doing this interview terrifies me because my face is out there now.
But there's something else driving Pedro Gonzalez to share his story.
Because it's not fair. It's not right. I mean, you have to be willing to step up if you know that something's not right.
Gonzalez is one of countless victims who know firsthand not all cops have your best interests in mind.
And I knew I was being extorted.
Those who do eventually helped piece together what we now know was a massive corruption scheme, a criminal enterprise that operated in the shadows for at least 3 decades, where police worked directly with defense attorneys to target people stopped for DWI, extorting them for cash in exchange for a guaranteed dismissal.
We have over 100 people that have reached out to us to ask for assistance through our class action. We've also been doing our own homework and believe that the class is much larger than that.
Taylor Smith and 2 other civil rights attorneys represent those suing in civil court, seeking justice for those they claim had their lives upended by corrupt police officers.
The victims call us for information, and they have a right to know what's going on, and the law mandates that as well.
But attorneys say federal prosecutors aren't communicating with them.
The feds may know about 5 or 6 other officers. We need to know that as well so we can begin prosecuting those officers.
10 former officers so far, mostly from APD, pled guilty to federal crimes. To date, none of them are behind bars, and the civil case against them is stuck in legal purgatory. One of the cops turned criminals was Gonzalez's arresting officer in 2023, former APD officer Joshua Montano.
Gave me a DWI. They told me I was going to be going to court, but instead of taking me to jail, they ended up taking me home. Because I did have my dog.
Montano noted in his report the prisoner transport center was closed due to staffing issues, a pattern we noticed officers used in the scheme to skirt protocol. Gonzalez says the next day he got a call from Rick Mendez, a paralegal for former defense attorney Thomas Clear III.
He told me that you worked at Maverick and that you were going to need your license and you're going to need some help. And I was like, oh, okay. So he goes, if you want, we can meet somewhere later on today if you'd like. And I was like, okay. And I thought it was going to be like his office or something.
Instead, they met at a Freddy's parking lot where Mendez explained the deal.
He asked me if I had $4,000, that all this would go away, and that it would be just like nothing happened. I told him that I didn't have the money yet, and he goes, well, I'm going to give you some more time. He goes, but next time it's going to be, now it's going up to $6,000.
Gonzalez says the meeting felt wrong, and at one point Mendez showed up with a different APD officer at his side.
I was like, wow, what am I going to do?
Did you feel kind of backed into a corner, like when he mentioned your workplace?
Yeah, because they knew where I worked. They knew, I felt like they knew me. That they were watching me or something, and I was like, wow. I felt like I was stuck between a rock and a hard place. I didn't know where to turn, but I felt like I couldn't go to the police department.
Because it was the police?
Because it was the police doing this to me.
Someone he could turn to was a customer at his store.
And I didn't realize that the FBI agency was right down the street from me. And I used to get a lot of regulars in there from there.
Gonzalez started talking to the FBI, allowing them access to his talks with Mendez.
Bottom line, eventually you're going to get caught.
Gonzalez was key to the cops getting caught. Federal search warrants reveal information he and others who came forward provided to investigators eventually led to federal charges for 13 people so far. His arresting officer charged with RICO conspiracy, crimes commonly associated with the mafia.
What do you hope happens?
That they get what's coming to them. I wish they were the ones that were paying for it all.
While Montano and the rest remain free, Gonzalez and those behind him in the lawsuit say this delayed justice isn't justice for them.
What would be your message to those officers?
How dare you take a job or take a position where you're supposed to take care of the community, and you chose to abuse the community. You're here to protect and to serve the community and to make sure that we are safe, not to put more money in your pocket and not to use us that way.
Gabrielle Burkhart, KRQE Investigate.
Now, Alex, do you think there's still room to invoke Hanlon's razor in this situation? Or do you think maybe perhaps that there is was a corruption problem going on?
How would I even invoke it? What is the incompetence part?
I don't know. It's just a series of mistakes going on for 30 years. You know, who knows? It's just
30
accidents.
years
I don't even understand how to invoke Hanlon's razor in the majority of cases other than sticking your fingers in your ear and going, I'm not listening to the details that you're giving me. Just invoke Hanlon's razor. So I don't know how to do it in the average case.
I mean, what I'm struggling to understand is, let's say there were 100 victims here, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Did nobody in DWI court notice that the police officers in those cases had an incredible penchant for missing court dates?
Well, you know, I'm sure that there are cases where they didn't do the scheme. They didn't run the scam on the person they were arresting, and so therefore, they did appear in court at times, and so the one-offs where they might have run it might have been distributed evenly. You know, perhaps they were a little savvy on that.
Like, let's say they were only missing like 30% of their cases.
Mm-hmm.
That is still probably unusually high.
Yeah.
We're not talking about like them missing 10 cases over 30 years. We're talking about them missing hundreds. Yeah.
Well, and consider the one detail that the guy they were interviewing, one of the victims, have said. It's like if the story that they told is to be believed, the initiation of the investigation by the FBI is because of FBI agent came in for a pack of smokes one day. Like he worked at the convenience store down the street from an FBI center, and then the guy came in and was a customer. So that's how they like.
Right. But I mean, what that means is that probably the courthouse itself was in on the deal.
Looking the other way, at least, understanding there's something going on.
Somebody was getting a cut somewhere to like not be very confused about how all these cases were getting dismissed.
Now here's a perfect place for you to invoke Hanlon's razor, Alex. Just the judges.
Yes.
There you go. Of course they're not involved.
It just didn't,
Alex.
Better to
attribute to incompetence than malice, right? Better for some reason. It's better. Even just do it.
Yep.
Just do it.
No.
No? Okay. Well, we actually have a little bit more on that story. Because one of the agents that was involved in the counter sting investigation sort of was being interviewed by the local news on a long form podcast and was describing some of the techniques that they used throughout the uncovering.
So, I mean, a wiretap is a high level, right? You need to have probable cause to be able to listen to kind of the most private conversations people are going to have, right? Was just going to be on their phone mainly. Traditionally, obviously, they used to be way more effective because that's all we had, right? It would be for social media and text messages. That was kind of, so to hit that standard would be a very high bar to reach. But like in everything else, you have to try everything else before you even get to that point. So that's when we talked about confidential informants. Yes, you try all the techniques, surveillance and everything else that goes with it, from poll cams, you name it, right? Everything you've seen on TV, Hollywood, movies, we try all those techniques. When all those things get you only to a certain point, so you're not able to actually see what the scope of the crime truly is, that's when you start looking at those more, very pervasive type of techniques so that we can be able to see truly what's going on behind the scheme, right? An informant can only know so much because they have a certain relationship that only goes to a certain level. To get past that level is obviously you got to get in within a certain, a criminal, that's what we're talking about, a criminal's intimate circle. And to get into that intimate circle, well, the only way you're going to do that is you actually get an informant that gets right up close and personal, or you start listening to communications.
Mm-hmm. And I know, for those people who have seen The Wire, the old HBO, it's kind of like that, right?
I think that was only one season, right?
No, there were multiple seasons. This is a great show. You go back and watch; it's good. But anyway, so is it true, like kind of The Wire, where even when you are listening into the wiretap, like there's pertinent and non-pertinent information that you're listening for, right?
Right. And there's all these exceptions that go with it, right? There's the attorney-client privilege that still exists even when you're on a wire, or someone speaking to their clergyman about just matters of personal that has nothing to do with criminal activity. Now, there's always that, what if the activity or the conversations turn into criminal activity? Then you're allowed to continue to listen. If it's not, or even if you're having a conversation with someone that's personal, you can tell, after listening for a short period of time that it's not going to be criminal in nature, then the people listening have to what we call minimize. So they got to minimize the conversation, and they can spot check from that point forward. And if they're still talking about taking the dog to the vet, then you go ahead and minimize again, and then you can spot check until that conversation ends, or when you maybe click on and all of a sudden they're talking about criminal activity. Then at that point, you can continue to listen.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds like these wiretaps were very crucial to understanding the scope of how this criminal activity was going on. So just for context here, this investigation really started unfolding in the public eye in January of 2024 when we saw the FBI raiding the homes of certain law enforcement officers and other key players in this case. Really, this was the feds executing some of the search warrants that we're finally able to see. So again, setting the scene for how the scheme worked, officers within APD's DWI unit were targeting people, arresting them for DWI. Then they'd often keep some sort of collateral from the suspect, like a driver's license. They take that license to a specific defense attorney's office ran by Thomas Clear III and his paralegal Rick Mendez. Mendez did much of the communicating with officers. And then the person charged with DWI would get a call saying, hey, I heard you got in trouble, might need some help, come meet me. They'd go meet Mendez, who had possession of their driver's license, and he'd offer to give it back for a price anywhere from $8,500 to $10,000 in cash payments is what Clear's office was demanding. So way above the going rate for a criminal defense of DWI. But they'd be able to guarantee a dismissal because they were scheming for the officers to purposefully miss court or not file charges at all in some cases. And they'd each take a cut, the officers, Tom Clear's office. So that's all setting the stage so people understand how it worked.
Sure.
When the FBI executed these search warrants, what were they looking for in the homes of these officers in the defense attorney's office to help build and prove the case?
It was just evidence of those crimes, right? Of all those schemes that we had heard. So there was many things that we received prior to the investigation. We talked about confidential sources, but we were just also getting calls from the public just saying, I think that this is going on, because maybe they heard it, second or third from someone that they knew that may or may not have been part of this scheme. And they just wanted to do the right thing. They were a concerned citizen. They wanted to report this information. So we were getting inundated, not just us, but the local police officer, the APD was one of the agencies. And we were kind of filtering through all that and saying, is there something more to this? Or is it, being misread for something else? When we got to the point where we knew exactly what it is that we had is when we started investigating, trying all those basic techniques. And then when we got to the point where we think this is something that we need to go ahead and open up as a full and formal investigation, that's when we reach out to the U.S. Attorney's Office and ask them, would you prosecute, right? Did we collect the evidence that we think that we will be able to collect? Will you prosecute this investigation? And then you moving forward, right, to where we are today.
Mm-hmm. So in those executions of the search warrants where we saw the FBI raids at the homes, I imagine, you're looking for computers, records, address books.
So, when we talked about the types of techniques, right? So probable cause is what you need. But when you're going on a wiretap, obviously that expectation of privacy is way higher. So we can do some of the other types of searches where it be on your phone or a property, looking for the evidence of those crimes. I mean, we knew what we were looking for. We're looking for the records that may or may not have already been told to us on the front end by people that were involved. It's kind of a tricky investigation, right? Because it's not traditional victim and then a true public corruption case that someone is victimized and they're being extorted or whatever the case may be. Here we had individuals who were probably stopped for legitimate reasons that any true law enforcement officer would have go ahead and done their job and arrested, apprehended, and made those persons pay for the crimes they committed. In this case, we're talking about DUI. In this case, that same individual became eventually a victim because they were extorted by the same officers that stopped them for the illegal crime that they were committing, and now was asking for additional funds to make the whole reason why he stopped them to begin with, make the whole thing go away. So we were looking for evidence of those crimes.
Investigators found that I read in the search warrants was a large collection of firearms in Rick Mendez's home, close to 40 guns, including a Tommy gun. And then reading through the FBI narrative, I think the FBI investigator noted that this is, not that surprising. Can you speak to that? Was it surprising to see such a large collection of firearms for someone engaged in a corruption scheme like this?
So it's different, right? I think everyone has different preferences, and so it may or may not be depending on the individual. So it's hard to say on that one. But we definitely are looking for what you call fruits of the crime, right? So when you get a lot of unexplained wealth, well, you're going to need to do something with that money. Either you're going to try to invest it in offshore accounts, or you're going to try to buy property and stuff with it. So it's either way. We're trying to kind of build a profile that we think Abby should have, based on what she reports every year to IRS. This is where she should be financially. And then we're looking at building our records, and maybe this doesn't make sense. So we're also looking at a financial investigation at the same time that we're looking for actual evidence of a crime.
Mm. And along the lines
and guns are expensive.
Yeah. And having the cash from this scheme seemed to be one of the big things was, what do you do with that cash, right?
Especially when a lot of the victims, right, depending on when we're looking at this investigation, they were paying in cash. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's what they were being requested to do, was to pay in cash.
It seems like with cash, it is hard to track how much money was potentially gained through this enterprise. Can you tell us if investigators looked through bank records trying to find evidence of high-dollar purchases that people were making?
So going back to unexplained wealth, we're looking to see if it just makes sense for someone to be having in their accounts, and the legitimate means of accounts, if we can actually track to their overall earnings. And if there's something that's a discrepancy, those are all red flags to help bolster the overall investigation. And that's kind of what we're looking at. Does it make sense for these assets that we just uncovered, whether it's in a banking institution or real property, or even maybe it's not even registered in their name, but we see it at their home and it's consistently there, or we see them consistently driving these vehicles that may or may not be in their name. Does that all make sense? And can we prove it so that just looking on the outside, with all the tools that we have, before we actually go very intrusive, can we build a story that we can all say, it makes sense, maybe there's nothing to see here. At the end of the day, we were able to kind of put the story together that things just didn't make sense. And the evidence we were collecting made more sense, that we needed to investigate further.
Another thing that struck me from reading through these wiretaps is just how casually the officers talked to each other about the criminal scheme, talking about having to repeatedly miss court, getting asked for a doctor's note by the district attorney's office, for example. I want to read just a portion of the transcript from former APD officer Honorio Alba talking on the phone with a prosecutor about why he claims he could not make it to court the following day. Alba said, quote, "I ended up waking up and throwing up all over myself. We're going to blame McDonald's. I shouldn't have ate that effing hot and spicy," end quote. Investigators knew through other communications from Alba at this point that that was a blatant lie. I'm just curious, as an investigator, what do you make of excuses like that?
I mean, it kind of those statements, and obviously what we knew was happening in reality based on caseloads and things that they were doing in their regular work. Because you got to remember, at this point, when it came to this investigation, we're working closely, and the biggest partner, I think I've said it several times, is APD. So APD they didn't know exactly what we're doing on our end, but we were kind of justifying and make sure that, we weren't way off base on the things. Like, we understood their processes more than anything. They really kind of gave us the insight to understand, like, what is the first step when someone, is going to be a failure to appear? Like, explain that to us. We didn't want to make determination that we understood anything that we didn't do on a daily basis. So they helped us understand the process, which helped us then go back and kind of backfill all the things that we didn't know, and then kind of build a timeline and start to see, all right, this is the normal process of what should be happening and what shouldn't be. And when you start to listen to someone for a lengthy period of time, where you kind of live their life a little bit with them, so you know when they're being truthful and when they're not, and who they're actually being honest to and who they're not. Sometimes it's the closest people that they're talking to that, because you're almost living their life with them. You go, you're lying to them, right? You almost want to kind of, because that's what you're hearing. But so yes, you start to know that some of these things, even though these conversations really weren't coded, like you go back to that show you said, The Wire, so a lot of coded conversations that you didn't really kind of figure out till the end of the series, right, on how they were communicating and telling people where to be and those types of things. In this case, they were pretty blatant about it. They were just flat out saying it in most instances.
Now, Alex, it looks like you have gotten bumped down to listener for some reason. I don't know if you're having technical difficulties, if it's just a marker on my side that's mistaken, if you're no longer marked as a co-host, but hopefully you can come back and rejoin. If someone wants to request to speak in the meantime, we're around the middle point here, so go ahead and request to speak and comment on anything we've talked about so far or something we haven't talked about yet. The interesting thing I find in this scenario at the end there was the excuse that he ate some bad McDonald's, and these guys have now been arrested, and the arrests have been going on for a year. If they would have just waited a little bit longer, they would have had an explosive diarrhea from Taco Bell excuse. They missed out on that though, because they all got arrested in the last year. They just missed their opportunity to have a perfect excuse for not showing up for their
Can you hear me?
cases. Yes, I can.
Okay.
There you are.
Yes.
All right. So you see,
does not work very well.
No.
Yeah, I'm happy to hear that they did finally end up trying to figure out what the hell is going on the court side when these guys were missing their cases.
Yeah. But the one gentleman, as I was saying, I don't know if you caught it, is he missed out on the opportunity since they were arresting him. They missed out on the opportunity to blame Taco Bell and explosive diarrhea for their absence.
That's right. That if only this has gone a little bit longer, they might have gotten away with it.
Yeah. So I mean, this
you have a driving with influence thing, right? And the police officer has a medical issue. You just drop the case? Is that really how it works?
In a lot of things, these situations, there's usually a probable cause hearing, and the probable cause hearing is before you move to any trial for the actual arrest. So if the cop doesn't show up to the probable cause hearing, it doesn't move forward to a trial because the police officer didn't show up to testify.
I realize, but doesn't the hearing get postponed if there's some medical issue that prevents a police officer from appearing? Really, it's just you're just kind of hoping that they're okay. That's just wild to me.
Well, we learn new things about the justice system every day, don't we?
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
Frankly, I think having through the whole bricks and minifigs thing, which I don't know if you covered last week. I didn't have time to finish the whole episode. But if not, we should. I've kind of gotten introduced to a whole other type of lawyer YouTuber and seen a bunch of other cases of police corruption. And where was I going with this? Yeah, it really does seem that they sort of know all these little edge cases of the court system, and it almost feels like this out to not appear is there deliberately to allow the police officer to in effect admit that this probably should have been brought without putting it on the record. See what I mean?
Yeah. I see what you're saying. Well, the bricks and minifigs thing, for those who aren't familiar, is a recent sort of viral case that a lot of people have heard of. So if you haven't heard of it, you're one of the people who avoids a lot of social media, which is possibly a very good thing for you and your sanity. But the bricks and minifigs situation is there's a retail chain that has franchises called Bricks and Minifigs, and it specializes in products that are Legos and Lego adjacent. And there was a family who had collected a lot of Star Wars related Lego collections and kept them in pristine condition. Some of them mint for many, many years. And they had totaled their worth at around $200,000 or something. And they had taken them to a franchise of Bricks and Minifigs to do a consignment sale. And the Bricks and Minifigs franchise store changed ownership at some point, and it became a fiasco of trying to account for the unsold items, sold items that hadn't been paid yet, and the location of these remaining sets that wound up becoming a initial viral situation with a influencer on YouTube hearing the story and going to basically mess with the new franchise owner of Bricks and Minifigs, this Bricks and Minifigs store, to try to do a private investigation, a personal investigation of what happened, and do some, jokestery sort of stuff to get his own channel publicity and things like that, dramatic stuff for show. And he wound up getting in some trouble with the law for some of the things that he did. And there were some lawsuits trying to reclaim the money from Bricks and Minifigs, the actual main corporation that does the franchising. And there is a channel called CoffeeZilla who did a recent expose trying to get to the details of all of the situation. And so, Alex, with that introduction, what is it that you have recently become aware of with the Bricks and Minifigs situation?
I mean, do you really want to go into it?
I'm curious. I mean, I'm curious. I had not followed it. If you have something that on your mind to update, I'm more than happy to hear it.
Well, the whole thing took a turn because it came into basically it became a whole police corruption case in Utah, right? So in effect, this whole thing ended up with this YouTuber that you mentioned, who goes by Reckless Ben, sort of following the Bricks and Minifigs corporate structure to its home in Utah, where the police, come with odd names that you might find in the Book of Mormon. And as do the Bricks and Minifigs executives, if you're catching my drift, and there was just all these unbelievably weird phenomena where judges that went to BYU, that's Brigham Young University, for those of you who are not as deep in Mormon theology as for whatever reason I am, Brigham Young is the successor of Joseph Smith, and Joseph Smith is the original prophet of the Mormons / Latter-day Saints. Ergo, sort of, to pull it all back together, you basically had a network of judges, cops, executives, just everything, who were clearly Mormons protecting each other. To me, okay, allegedly, as far as I can tell, very obviously. And then you had a lot of their body cam footage be released, including a bunch of footage that they uploaded accidentally unredacted, which showed even more stuff. And now recently we've had additional footage come out that showed a detective plotting with the CEO of the company to figure out what kind of charges they can put on Reckless Ben to get him off their cases, basically. Anyway, there's been a lot of insane kind of things, but in effect, I think the way I would summarize the situation is that this YouTuber did do a lot of incredibly reckless things, but were it not for those things, we would not have seen how deep the rabbit hole goes. No way.
So the moral of the story is be as reckless as possible to expose the fraud that you want to expose. Is that a moral that we're learning today, Alex?
It's in complex systems, sometimes you need a perturbation to see what moves, you just start moving variables around and see what other variables start moving. And this guy definitely did not. He was not the sort of thing their system was built to handle. Let me put it this way. They were not expecting the Spanish Inquisition. Anyway, it's an incredibly. Have you followed it onto its most recent developments, or do you just?
I'm weeks behind. So the last thing I saw was this channel Coffeezilla doing a review where he was trying to actually literally go frame by frame through video that was collected to identify what was labeled as part of the consignment agreement and where they might have been on given days, and then the new franchise owners sort of explanations for having U-Haul vans at the property on certain days where he was alleged to have moved the material using U-Hauls and things like that. That was the last that I had particularly paid attention to it.
So there was a funny little part that Coffeezilla put in his Patreon afterwards. I'll just share this one just as a fun little extra or a mini story, I guess. Because in effect, what happened was there were some police reports that came out that indicated that the guy that Coffeezilla spoke to, one of them anyway, had basically misled Coffeezilla, right? So I'm going to try to, I've got the texts here, I'm going to try to read them a little bit. So Coffeezilla sends a message to this Josh Johnson, says, "You told the police the vast majority of the items in the store were layaway items?" Because he had told Coffeezilla that there were no layaway items. And this Johnson guy says, "This is either an exaggeration with a police officer or a mistake by me. A, there was no list left of any layaway. The only layaway I'm aware of was the Ewok village. B, I had nothing to do with the day-to-day operations of the store. I wouldn't know if there were layaways. I wouldn't have been asked about it either." So the guy gives him a police report that says, "You said X." And he says, "No, I wouldn't have said that. And I mean, maybe, I don't know. I wasn't, whatever." Anyway, at some point, Coffeezilla is like, "But what I don't understand is why the officer would put in his report, you said that if it wasn't true." And the guy says a bunch of other stuff. It's like, I don't know. What officer? When was that? I don't control what they put in their report. And it's like, Kaiser Police, May 6th, Jennifer Stearns was the officer who signed off on this. Oh, that's understandable. I was out of my mind angry. I was pissed. Nothing I said was coherent or reliable. Let's just look at the sale records. Anyway, and he goes on.
Oh,
more.
Okay.
Do you understand? Like,
I just say stuff sometimes, and I don't remember what I mean.
Sometimes just say stuff to the police. I don't know. I just lie.
Listen,
lie to the cops. I don't know. I get
unlike
angry,
other people,
I get
unlike other people, I don't exactly say things to communicate ideas. I just say things because I like the sounds that it makes. The way that this, the way the sibilance.
I mostly try to manipulate people. It's understandable. I mean, who doesn't really?
Oh man.
Yes, this was one. Anyway, and things have developed since as well.
Gotcha.
I thought that was one of the wildest. I mean, how do you get a more like sociopathic responses? After you're dancing around the topic that you've been nailed to a cross. They're like, oh yes, well, that's understandable. I was really angry at that. I mean, I just said a bunch of things,
I've been accumulating a lot of personal stories of that nature that I can't share, but it is a problem in some places. There are people who will just say things. Speaking of people who like to just say things, Alex, we have a segment that we occasionally do here coming up. Communists say the darndest things. The DSA, Alex, as you're well aware, has been gaining some traction in parts of the country, particularly New York City, where now the mayor is a member of the DSA, and the youth, so to speak, are their affinities are going towards the DSA, and DSA has been making some rounds on the cable news channels as the Democratic Party is increasingly becoming aware that the DSA is part of their base now. And a Gustavo Gordillo of the DSA was given an interview on Fox News this last week and asked a few things about New York.
How does the government become more democratized if the government takes over more of the power? So, for example, here in New York, if you have government-owned grocery stores, right? And that was what Mamdani promised. I know you were supportive of his election, and I interviewed him here. So they're up like breaking ground on one grocery store so far. It's going to cost $30 million to build a grocery store. In what world does it make sense to build a $30 million grocery store and put competitive pressure on the bodegas that are in the neighborhood?
I think that what we saw in the mayoral campaign is the mayor was able to build a movement that inspired people to believe that we could have a government that works for ordinary people, that is actually responsive to the working class.
Inspiration is great, but if you're the bodega owner, how would you feel if the government opened a big grocery store right next to your bodega?
If one publicly owned grocery store that brings prices down in the neighborhood is enough to put someone out of business, then maybe they shouldn't have been in that business in the first place.
Interesting.
Alex, how would you respond to the idea that if the government is able to outcompete local businesses on food prices at some price level, that maybe those businesses should have rethought their existence?
That's right. You were right. Who told your great granddad to start, this bodega here? If us dumping $30 million right next door is going to cause you issues. I mean, I would like to commend the DSA member on his understanding of market economics, though. That was unusually lucid, I must say. Well, look, joking aside, I must say, unfortunately, I feel for the people who are finding, let's say, no other avenue for political expression than these kinds of political movements because, unfortunately, there's the elephant in the room that, unfortunately, there's just literally no other organized political force that has any way of doing anything about anything that is willing to speak up on. And this is what happens when you provide, slam dunk, easy wins to the commies. Yeah, this is what you get.
Well, the interview was longer. I'm only going to have one more clip from Gustavo here. This topic is about housing.
Along West 45th Street, and this is after Mayor Mamdani is in office. He doesn't want to remove any homeless people from the streets, and it's causing a lot of problems for the small business owners that try to have a business along that route. What do you think of this when you look at this squalor in New York City?
I think it's a huge crisis, and it's been around since capitalists have been mayors for decades. Yes, it has.
Like that. I've been here for a very long time, and these things come and go. Mayor Adams actually removed the homeless encampments from the streets because they're not safe for the people who live there, and they're not safe for the people who live around them.
The problem we're facing in our housing system is that we talk about tenants and we say they have to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. They have to be responsible financially. But when we look at the landlords, we don't use those same standards. Landlords in New York have been making a 12% return on their investment on average.
How much should they make? What's fair for the landlord to make if you don't like 12?
They're complaining that 12 is not enough. And we don't think that anyone should have a constitutional right to double-digit returns on their investment. That's why we've implemented...
No one should have a right to a double-digit return on their investment.
No one has a right. That's not... No,
what are you talking
no
about?
One's in that. That's not in the Constitution. But what we see is that when we implement a rent freeze, we have landlords who are crying that the government is going to put them out of business.
They're trying to run a business, and they're trying to do it effectively. Are all landlords perfect? Are some landlords lousy? Of course they are. But I just think that the idea that no one should make a double-digit profit is the antithesis of the desire to, you can be anything you want to be in New York.
So, Alex, it is true. I did a fact check. There is no explicit right in the Constitution to have 12% profit. I checked it. So on that level, it's fact check true. He's got her there.
And I mean, if the DSA is loyal to anything, it's the Constitution of the United States. They're really the constitutional party.
Absolutely. Except, well, maybe they want a couple changes, and that's the DSA co-chair doing an interview on Fox News.
Look, in the immortal words of the Sam Harris butchered, the Constitution is not a suicide pact, sir.
This is true.
I am tired.
If it were, it would say we will all kill ourselves on such and such date.
Exactly. No one agreed to that.
A set of people on the very far left in the Democratic Party, my party, telling us that in order for us to be progressives, we now have to believe ideas and support ideas that are completely nuts.
You got a set of defunding, decriminalizing, open borders. We have run that play and gotten our butts kicked. We don't need to do it a second time to see if if the movie turns out any different.
Prominent Democrat voices pushing back on the growing influence of the Democratic Socialist candidates they say are ultimately going to hurt the Democrat Party. So let's talk about it with the national co-chair of the Democratic Socialists of America, Megan Romer. Megan, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Shannon.
Okay, so there's this growing conversation about whether you can exist within the party, whether you want to upend it for your own purposes, a totally different platform. The Daily Economy quotes you saying this at a DSA convention last year. We will win by making conditions so intolerable for the ruling class that they would rather give in to our demands than continue to live with the disturbance we cause until we are able to fully seize power ourselves. Is that aimed at the Democrat Party?
It's aimed from the working class to the ruling class. So the two-party duopoly, the two corporate parties, it is aimed at both of them, and it comes from the working class.
So should Van Jones and Rahm Emanuel and James Carville and all of the establishment Democrats be worried about DSA plans from within their tent?
The establishment Democrats should be worried about the voters and about what the voters think and about what the constituency thinks. And right now they have not been delivering, and our candidates are and have been, and it's resonating with voters.
So Jamie Harrison, who was the DNC chair, after you guys had such a big night in New York City and knocking off some of those incumbents and having success with your candidates in the congressional primaries, he said, if you hate the Democratic Party, then don't run for our nomination. Don't use our resources. Don't rely on our volunteers. Don't use our infrastructure. Focus on building the party you actually support. Other Democrats out there saying this is a separate party, the DSA. You don't belong within the party. How do you respond to his statements there?
Yeah, I mean, the two parties have over years and decades created a system where ballot line access is extremely difficult for third parties. I also have been told a lot of times by Democrats, don't vote third party, it's wasting your vote. So we run on the Democratic ballot line where it makes sense. We run independents sometimes where that is a viable possibility, but it's a ballot line. And what matters is what the voters think, and the voters are overwhelmingly choosing our candidates.
They certainly did in New York and in other places, Colorado and others. It's not just a big city phenomenon or just a blue coastal phenomenon. Sure. Okay, so we're going to put up on the screen a few of the things that are part of your platform, and I want to ask you, just give me sort of a true or false on these. Abolish the Senate.
True.
Okay, replace the presidency and Supreme Court as we now know them.
Yep.
Abolish ICE.
Absolutely.
Abolish borders and give amnesty to anyone currently in the U.S. illegally.
As a long-term plan, yep.
Defund the Pentagon.
Absolutely.
Abolish prisons, at least in large part.
Yeah, again, that, as part of a long-term program, yeah.
Okay, so no prisons. Government or public ownership of most large corporations.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so then let's go back through some of those then. Abolish the Senate. There are people who are in the Senate now who are very supportive of DSA. They lose their seats?
Well, the Senate is an anachronistic institution. It comes from the British House of Lords. It is made to protect power for, the Senate was part of the system that was made to make sure that the people didn't have too much of a say. So we want to expand Congress significantly, but make it a unicameral legislature.
Okay, and without the presidency and Supreme Court, so abolish ICE. Would there be any enforcement of immigration laws, or with abolishing the border, we're not enforcing immigration laws, they go away?
Yeah, so again, this is part of this longer term plan, and part of it
But if you
includes,
can get there.
Yeah, I mean, if we can get to the place where the U.S. is not destabilizing countries in order to mine them for resources, there will be significantly less migration.
What do you say to those, though, that would potentially destabilize the U.S.? Because there's only so much the economy can bear, and when you have a flood of people coming in, it might not work out economically, according to a lot of analyses, if you just open up the borders and there's no enforcement at all.
Well, we're not saying open the borders tomorrow. We're saying rebuild an economy and a society that works for everyone. And the open borders is part of a longer-term international plan that involves us stopping destabilizing countries. Most people who are coming to this country are coming as economic refugees, and we destabilized their country. We did that.
Well, a lot of, if you look at data, the Center for Immigration Studies says right now the households here in the U.S. that are headed up by people who are here illegally, nearly 61% of them are on some type of government or welfare program here in the U.S. Can we afford to do that? I mean, at some point you run out of resources.
Well, right now we make it very difficult for people to participate in society in such a way that they can avoid using services. So we want people to be able to work and live and go to school and actually participate, which means contributing to society and also getting what they need from society. It's a collective choice we can all make.
So if we talk about abolishing prisons, then does that make society better? I mean, is there anybody that should be incarcerated? I mean, rapists, child predators, murderers?
Yeah, so the long-term plan, when we think about most people who are in prison, they are mostly in prison for crimes of poverty. But
that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the really,
I
the
hear
murders
you.
and
So
rapists of the
when
world.
Yeah, so when we get rid of this need for crimes of poverty to exist, when we get rid of that destabilizing force that creates so many people who are living in desperate situations and doing desperate things, that brings those numbers down to very small numbers, and then we can collectively decide what we do with those people. I suspect it won't look like the prison system as we know it today.
Okay, but you do think some people need to be locked away from society?
Some people are not able to be functional members of society. That's true. But what does that look like to keep the rest of us safe? You know, we're talking about safety. We're not talking about punishment. We're talking about making sure that we're safe, everybody's safe, everybody maintains their dignity, and everybody maintains their humanity.
I gotta say, Alex, I'm a little skeptical of some of the ideas there. I'm not saying that they're 100% invalid without points, but I'm gonna say that some of them I'm a little bit skeptical on. Alex, I don't know. The let's see what happens. Justice system idea is a little bit sketchy.
You're putting me in the unfortunate position of having to defend the DSA platform here, but I will take one for the team and just do it. You could imagine her sort of gesturing at something like the Norwegian justice system, right? Which is mostly about keeping people away from society, but not necessarily in punitive conditions, right? Mm-hmm. Which arguably would necessitate a substantially wealthier society in order to be able to afford that sort of thing. But then again, she does have a somewhat of a point that Norway does not imprison some, appreciable percentage of its population, mm-hmm. which makes it much harder to do humanely. Again, if I wanted to steel man her point,
now under that steel man,
much of what she talks about is she's describing, at least maybe she wants more hardcore things, but much of what she's describing is a European style social democracy with substantial resources. To be clear, when that gets implemented, I will have to immigrate yet again. But
well, now you had mentioned Norway, right? And so as sort of an example place, right?
It's not really a random example. It is the most successful and just ludicrously wealthy with oil country. But yes.
Okay, and you're referring to aspects of the criminal justice system there that is.
Yeah, just go and look up. There's YouTube documentaries about how the prisons are, and if you delve into those, you might be tempted to go to Norway and commit a couple of crimes.
Because there's questions that arise, right?
You can take pottery, you can take woodworking.
There is
ample time outside.
Well, there's questions that arise. Like, so let's imagine that the first set of questions you ask is that by and large are the laws similar, right? So that you have a set of laws in the United States or a particular location in the United States. Do you have a similar set of laws over in Norway, or do you have only a subset in Norway, that they have a reduced set of laws? Then if you would determine that they have a reduced set of laws, that there's only a subset that they apply, the things that are part of the superset are those activities that are engaged in to high proportion in Norway. And is that a problem? So for all intents and purposes, an activity never engaged in where there is a law against it, the law is somewhat potentially moot because nobody was inclined to commit the crime. Or is it a situation where...
What are you referring to? Can you be more specific?
Well, for example, if we run with what her idea would have been before some clarifications, okay, get rid of the prison justice system, she said, she
did say for the most part.
Sure,
yes.
Sure. But she started to carve out exceptions for, let's say, murderers, right? Rapists, things like that. She started to say, like, okay, these people. Mm-hmm. Well, guess the entire category of white collar crime and public corruption is no longer something that someone could be imprisoned for if you just stop at the questions based off of what she said there. You don't give her any further room for clarification. So white collar crimes are now something that would be sort of free game, right? We would anticipate that in
there's nothing to white collar crime when you're taxed at 98%.
Well, that's not true. Not paying your taxes would be a white collar crime. In that
it's like saying you're not paying your taxes in Pol Pot's Cambodia. Like, so what?
I'm not sure that the philosophical ancestors of the places that started the gulags and re-education camps really need to pretend that they're against prison systems. I'm not sure. They might start off advocating, we got to abolish that, but I'm pretty sure just a couple hours into the whole experiment, they start deciding that certain people that they politically disagree with.
She would probably say that prisons are for keeping separate from society people who are a danger to society and not for punitive reasons. So presumably, if you were convicted of a white collar crime, you might be put in debt, right? Or have your reputation ruined to the point where you'll never really be able to, be in a financially sort of enviable position.
Sure.
But to the degree that you're not judged to be a danger, violently, I assume what she's saying is like there's no reason to keep you apart from society and away from your loved ones or something like that.
All right.
Again, I hate to be the DSA whisperer here. I'm just sort of giving you
No, it's perfectly fair. It's perfectly fair to try to find ways of giving them a platform that is not as insane as some of what they immediately state and that comes out of their mouth.
Look, what I loved is that she was like, abolish the Senate. Yep, sure. The presidency. Yeah, fuck that. The borders. Well, that's a longer term.
Well, yeah, it's not going to happen tomorrow.
She had some things where she was like, yeah, sure. I mean, definitely. Yeah, tomorrow. But then when it came to some other things that seemed relatively minor by comparison, she was like, well, whoa. We're not willing to go there quite yet.
I've pointed out many times that one of the long-term progressive sort of goals is to get rid of the Senate and make it, or at least make it indistinguishable from the House of Representatives. And that project started a long time ago in the early 1900s with the early progressive
I knew the
movement.
Wilson rant was coming.
That goddamn Woodrow Wilson, one of the biggest sons of bitches that ever was president.
Third DSA president.
So, of course, it's to be expected that that's part of their platform because it's been a long time goal, the erosion of the Senate, because one of the most significant changes in the Senate that occurred in the early progressive era was that the senators were really supposed to be chosen by the government of the state. So the governments themselves were choosing their representatives because the pact that was made part of the pact that was made whenever it was a discussion, whether we were going to be the, just a confederacy or if it was going to be there was going to be a federal government at all, was that in order to make sure, or at least reduce the possibility that the federal government was going to usurp power from the states itself, that the states needed their own representatives. That's why they were also equally apportioned, 2 per state, inside of the government, so that, yes, you can have, quote, the people be represented and having parts of the discussion as to what the federal government does, but that you also needed the states protecting their own sovereignty and their own interests via their own representatives, because an individual, their interests travel with them no matter what state they're in. So your personal interests don't necessarily just change because you went from Ohio to West Virginia. Doesn't just magically your interests magically change. There might be some nuance, but by and large, your interests as a person go with you. But an individual state has its own constitution. It has its own laws. It has its own, economy and things inside of it that the federal government could usurp on. The federal government could take power away from the states, and they have an interest in keeping that power. Whereas a person, no matter what state they're in, does not necessarily think about that. That's not on their mind when they decide that they want their interests represented. The first thing they got rid of was the fact that the government.
What she was describing is an a European style social democracy, right? You got a parliament, you got a prime minister. There is some sort of a presidency, though that is largely ceremonial and toothless. And that's how it works. It's a completely different system. But basically everything she was describing was. Let's just say she might have slightly contradicted her colleague from before, who was sort of letting it be implied that they were loyal to the Constitution.
Well, they're only loyal insofar that the Constitution has things that they agree with as a negative right, meaning it didn't explicitly say that you have the right to a 12% profit on anything, so we get to take it away, and you can't cry about it because only positive rights are listed in the Constitution, which is not correct. But with the Senate, as I was saying, the change that was made was to change the selection of senators to then become part of a statewide popular vote, which completely changed the incentive structures, and then changes the way that the incentives to evaluate the legislation get made. And that's a huge change that has had large effects on allowing the erosion of sovereignty, because now the individual senators are just kind of super representatives that nobody can really articulate why there's two exactly. You get something about making sure that smaller states are still equally represented, but what are you representing? It's the people's interests still. Why are there two? Like, it gets confusing why there's two bodies of. Yeah,
it de-emphasizes the state government as a part of the federal government, right?
Correct.
They're not technically. The black pill I have for you is one day we should sit down and talk about how the European Union works, because it is in many ways the more loose confederation of states that the United States is supposed to be.
Right.
And unfortunately, the way it's evolved is that it's become arguably worse than the federal government, because they have just as much power in some ways, but they are less coordinated. So they kind of just go much more by groupthink and also operate much more in the shadows. But the individual governments are still just as disempowered in many ways, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's like this chaotic situation where nobody really knows who's in control. But ultimately what happens is you have somebody like Ursula von der Leyen, who, if you haven't followed her, I mean...
Well, I did make a comment at one point. Ursula is the main villain in the Disney movie.
Multiple Disney movies.
Yeah, well, probably multiple, but at least in the one that's under the sea. What is that?
Oh,
Little Mermaid.
Yes.
Little Mermaid, there we go.
Ariel.
Yeah,
yes.
Little Mermaid, there we go. All right. All right. Well, again, I'm opening up for requests to speak if anyone has any comments on any of the stories we've covered or anything we've missed. But while we take those requests to speak, if anyone exists, we're going to move on, Alex, to the COVID updates that we're going to slide you in for here. You had just responded to you did a quote tweet earlier this week, and your quote tweet was, "Holy smokes, this is a hypothesis I developed myself and have not heard anyone else share." And the quote tweet that you had shared was from MENTJU4. It said, "Wait a second, did Christian Anderson nail another crackpot theory in private? Why were COVID lineages independently acquiring overlapping mutations? Christian, an apparent anti-vaxxer, suspects, that's a sarcasm, suspects vaccine-induced variants and asks where the vax trials were being done. Now, before I read the exchanges to give somewhat of a context, Christian Anderson is one of the scientists behind a landmark political paper, I'm going to call it, called Proximal Origins. And this paper was promoted in the media as the nail in the coffin against the lab leak hypothesis during the COVID times. And I supposedly proved beyond any semblance of a reasonable doubt that the actual patient zero was inside of the Wuhan wet market, and that it was a natural evolution of a SARS-CoV virus that had transferred from an animal to a human, and making that leap, and that it wasn't done as part of a gain-of-function experiment inside of the Wuhan Institute of Virology. This week, or over the last week, Senator Rand Paul from Kentucky, who has been sort of a anti-COVID hawk, let's call him, has been doing a lot of freedom of information pushes and finally got the Slack channel messages between these proximal origin authors released, a large swath of them, at least. And some of the contradictions between their public statements and their private statements are able to be seen. Now, Alex, several years ago during the COVID situation, around the 2021-2022 period, had sort of made a little...
Importantly, no, it was early 23, which will become relevant. Keep going. I'll tell you why.
Right. He made a little bit of a personal discovery. I recall him making at a time, and had a hypothesis that what they were calling escape variants. So if you recall that there were different variants being spread around with names at the time like Delta, etc., where after the initial push of vaccination, the people who had gotten the initial vaccine, they needed like boosters, and then they needed a different booster because the virus mutating and becoming able to the vaccine no longer able to protect people against the new variants, and so you'd have to get a Delta specific booster. Alex had done his sort of nerd obsessed thing that he's wont to do at times, and went on a deep dive to look at the trials where they were doing some of the original vaccine testing for the mRNA virus. This wasn't mRNA, was it? This was just a regular.
No. This was an adenovirus. This is the
right.
AstraZeneca specifically, which was not an mRNA. It was a adenovirus vaccine.
So he was doing some investigation into some of where the trials were, and he was also noticing a correlation with the first identified new virus lineages. And that may not be the best way of explaining it, but that is the version that came out of my mouth just now, where you were finding that mutations were being first identified in very close proximity to where these trials were being done as well.
Right.
Okay. So this leak of Slack messages, I'm going to read some of here. It's going to be a little bit hard to follow. I'm going to try to do my best.
Yeah, there's a bunch of them. You don't have to read everything, but there's a few of them.
So Christian Anderson, who is one of the Proximal Origin authors, said, where did they do the AstraZeneca trials again? He got replied, Johnson & Johnson in Brazil as well. Christian Anderson says, I'm also very curious to see what's going to happen to Israel in the vax campaign. Immune escape might be the most likely explanation here. Immune escape being that the virus itself mutates to be able to circumvent the immunity that has been now baked into the population. So you have, if you recall some of the discussions during the vaccine period, the vaccination period, there were discussions about whether or not the virus would mutate to circumvent these vaccinations, in particular the mRNA vaccines, because the mRNA vaccines were, what they were doing was effectively hijacking your own cells to produce what they were calling the spike protein, so that your immune system would identify the spike protein as a foreign object and build antibodies against that foreign object, so that when the SARS-CoV-2 virus really came into your body, it would already have identified the spike protein, which was one of the mechanisms that it was using to actually infect you, and then attack it. That was the idea that had some degree of effectiveness. But the virus then had as it was argued, would have a very narrow necessity to change in order to evade your immune system's detection, because the vaccine itself was now so narrowly focused. If the vaccine had given you the full virus itself, your immune system could target many different things. Let's just say the difference between being able to identify a perpetrator by one identifying thing, like let's say a tattoo on their shoulder, versus like you have an accurate sketch of what his face looks like, you have their height, you have their body weight, you have their hair color, eye color, like you have all of these things to identify an individual. Your immune system's identifying the virus by certain key factors, which it may have many identifiers to be able to identify that virus. With the mRNA vaccines, and I guess the Johnson & Johnson ones and the AstraZenecas, it was still a limited selection of the virus's profile, meaning the virus could just change smaller sections of it and evade detection. So immune escape is what they call that. Immune escape might be the most likely explanation here. This is Christian Anderson again, whether linked to natural immunity or vaccine induced. Now, at the time that this conversation was going on in their Slack channels, anyone worrying about the way that the vaccines were administered causing immune escape was ridiculed absolutely up and down as being a crackpot, a whack job, a absolutely insane person, because that's not how it works. But here in the private discussions, like whether linked to natural immunity or vaccine induced as being a possibility. Christian Anderson later says, just go back to our earlier crackpot theory. The emergence of these lineages, also now out of Brazil, makes me wonder a little. And Brazil was one of the places they were doing the testing. And then Christian Anderson says the overlap is uncanny, overlap of where the testing was and the overlap of where the new lineages were being discovered. Probably just totally random, but when we first discussed it, did we say, let's see what happens we did say, let's see what happens in Brazil. So in the discussions as released, they were having the same conversation that Alex had a hypothesis on during, you said 2023. I didn't remember what year it was. Okay, Alex, take the floor. That's my best.
Can you read the next tweet in that thread? Can you read the whole? It's a little bit of a longer passage, but can you read that one?
I copied these out, so I no longer have it.
Okay, I'll read it. I'll read it.
Okay, all right.
So the next snapshot that they have in that thread that we will attach here, it says, why did they not stabilize the spike? I don't know. So simple, people. If we follow this crackpot theory a little bit, knowing that animals that received the AstraZeneca vaccine were not protected against infection at all. Vaccinated animals had as much virus as unvaccinated animals in the upper airways after the challenge. Could the non-stabilized spike lead to a very narrow immune response with very few epitopes exposed, some of which might be suboptimal? If yes, then presumably the virus might be able to escape immunity quite easily by changing a limited set of amino acids and presumably the similar set of AAs. I don't know what that, some amino acids, I think. We wouldn't see the same happen in natural infections, more complex to escape. We also wouldn't see the same from other vaccines because, again, more complex. So this is the one where he narrows it down very, very specifically to AstraZeneca, pointing out something that I had also noticed, which is that the AstraZeneca vaccine specifically is the only one that did not use a modified spike. Okay, they used the raw original spike as it came out of Wuhan.
Okay, all right.
Possibly because they didn't have a heads up. But that's just me speculating. They actually had to do it in real time that this was happening.
Heads up, meaning that there has been information that's
they had no forward warning.
that they knew that this was going to happen and that there were people working on the spike in advance and that they had patents even for aspects of the proteins.
Well, I mean, Moderna showed up with a candidate, on the 14th of January of 2020 before the pandemic was,
right,
announced. I mean, make of it what you will. Anyway, AstraZeneca came up a bit later and they were moving really fast out of the UK. Anyway, long story short, when I try to figure out why AstraZeneca would be the unique one of the things that showed up is that they were the only ones of the big Western ones. I'm not sure about the Sputniks out of Russia and some others out of China. Okay, I'm talking about your Western, Johnson & Johnson, for example. Even though it was an adenovirus, they did have a modified spike, so that puts in a different category.
Right.
So this is the interesting thing. My hypothesis didn't just say it was immune escape, right? My hypothesis didn't just say it was adenovirus vaccines. It said specifically AstraZeneca is the issue, which they highlight here. This is the part that's nuts to me.
Well,
the reason that's interesting about it,
they still call you
go ahead.
Still call it you're still a crackpot because they did call it a crackpot theory in their text here. So you still get to you have that honor badge of being a crackpot.
Yeah, well, I mean, I wouldn't have it any other way.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's the wild part, right? And the reason I say it's important that it's 2023. So the story of this discovery, you'll find this amusing. Starts with Sam Harris, where he was going after our friend Brett and saying that this idea that the viruses came out of the vaccination campaign is obviously ridiculous because the variants came out after the before the widespread vaccination campaign that started, right? Which is true, which is correct. So I was like, well, that's an interesting point. I mean, he made some really colorful comments calling both Brett and Heather sort of that they didn't, he sort of characterized them as like not understanding how evolution works, which is a fascinating comment for the Trust the Experts guy to say, but whatever. So I was like, all right, let's dig into this, right? Because I think, I try to find things that are falsifiable to dig into. There's things that are vibes that are hard.
Every once in a while, he'll say something that's correct. He is, it
happens
parrot.
Whether by accident or not, it doesn't matter. Anyway, so I started digging into the Delta variant specifically, right? And I narrowed it down to the Maharashtra state, and not even like the big city in that state. Oh man, it's a really big state, and it's a really big state in India. My mind's blocking. But the thing is, like, we knew that the place where the Delta variant had been first observed was in a fairly small part of India. Like, saying like the virus showed up in India, when India has like 1.5 billion people, is probabilistically speaking, it's not really very convincing. But if you narrow it down to a city of a couple million people, okay, now we have a particular place and a particular time. And then I noticed that the local production of the AstraZeneca vaccine, which was done by the Serum Institute of India, was doing its own little safety trial in the same place. Among others, they had a number of locations, but one of them was that location.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, what are the odds? That's funny. And then so I kind of left that. I had a thread about that earlier, right? And I kind of just put that there, and I was like, well, okay, that's interesting. I mean, I don't know what I can say about it, but whatever. But it kept coming back to my mind. And in 2023, I basically used an early GPT-4 version, right? And I fed it that thread. And I was like, I was just kind of trying to play with it, sort of see what it gives me. Those early ones were severely retarded, but they would say interesting things from time to time. And I think it sort of pointed out, that basically it was like, well, AstraZeneca had trials also in South Africa and Brazil and Britain and whatever. And I was like, I think that's when it clicked. I was like, wait, South Africa is where the beta variant was. Britain was where the alpha variant was. Brazil was where the gamma variant was, and India was where the delta virus.
And then they ran out of Greek letters. And then they ran
alpha, beta,
letters.
gamma, delta. Oh no, they went to epsilon.
Oh, okay. Well,
I think they. Do you remember this? They came up to C, or she, and then they skipped that and went to Omicron because they didn't want to insult the chairman of the Chinese Communist Party. Anyway, long story short, it took him a while to give up on the Greek letters, but it kind of just popped up, and I was like, all right, I got to dig into this. Like, what is going on here? Like, what are the odds that now like 5 variants are showing up in the same countries that AstraZeneca specifically was testing its vaccine? And then I correlated the dates, and it looked, it's a little bit shaky, right? Because sometimes you'll see like one sample of a variant that is like 6 months earlier than any other sample. And that's probably bad data, right? That's probably a misclassified sample. So finding the first date that something was spotted and correlating with the trial is an inexact art. So you're always sort of doubting yourself, but at the same time, you have to be mindful, like, what are the odds that all of these variants started at roughly the same time, roughly the same place as all those trials from AstraZeneca? And that's where I left it, and frankly, it didn't really take off.
You forgot to,
and I didn't even push it much.
You forgot to invoke correlation does not imply causation. That automatically just discards whatever you were thinking. That's
right. That's why David is, just happens to own a car where a corpse just happened to be found, and she just happened to be his girlfriend, and he just happened to have bought a bunch of stuff, and how do we, he was
practicing juggling those chainsaws. That's what he was doing. He was adding some talents to his life.
He could juggle up to 11 air fresheners at the same time. Anyway, long story short, I kind of just left it at that, in part because I myself wasn't sure what to make of it, and I didn't have the confidence. Now, I will say one more thing in case we haven't discussed this before, which I find to be the absolute dumbest thing of all of this whole set. AstraZeneca did trials, in which they specifically recruited HIV positive patients. Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Now, your immune system had to have recovered to some extent, but you're still an HIV positive patient. And the way in which variants emerge, according to some of the people in the Slack channel, by the way, I used their models for viral evolution in order to understand what was happening, is called in-host evolution. So the point is, you don't get a variant emerging by having a strain that accumulates, one change here, one change there, jumping from one person to another over multiple infections in order to become a variant. What you tend to have is a patient who is just well enough to fight the virus, but not well enough to kill the virus, who is vaccinated so that their immune system does know what to, like, their antibodies have a certain kind of shape. But they're not competent enough in order to actually wipe out the virus. So the virus has enough time to have multiple generations of the virus inside the host within one infection.
You're basically a petri dish, giving it multiple attempts.
A petri dish. It's a gain of function experiment within a person.
Yeah.
Right. And some of these infections that they tracked went for multiple months. Right. So we're not talking about somebody who gets over it in a day or two or a couple of weeks. We're talking about infections that went for months. So basically, the virus gets multiple bites at the apple of trying to sort of dominate the immune system, and the immune system is just too weak, right? And the other part about the AstraZeneca vaccine is that they gave you one shot and then had different arms in their trial, and some arms took up to 12 weeks to give you the second shot, right? So you have somebody potentially now who is, or their immune system is already sort of, in a weakened state with HIV and whatever else they're taking to fight the HIV. They've been given only the first dose of a vaccine that might not be particularly, well suited to begin with, and is using the spike that is exposing a very narrow target.
Yeah.
to the virus. So you're really just, it's a layup for the virus to be like, oh, okay, all I have to do is work around these 2 or 3 targets, and then I'm home free. Like the immune system just can't catch me anymore. And the other thing they're noticing in their Slack messages is that the mutations that are happening across the world are all suspiciously very, very similar to each other.
Right. They're
right.
The escape is the same escape no matter what region, almost no matter what region you're in, which means
they have a fingerprint that is indicating, yes, exactly, that those viruses are trying to work around the same problem, the same very narrow problem. Anyway, so that's a story. But yeah, that HIV thing, man, when I saw it, I was like, you gotta be you gotta be kidding me, man.
Listen. Are you an expert on these things? You don't know what you're talking about.
Absolutely not.
You're a crackpot. So,
but just as a final comment, right? These guys realized this in 2020 or 2021 as it was happening. Yeah. Right. Had they spoken up, they could have stopped it. They could have actually, cut a year out of the pandemic by, pinpointing exactly where the variants were coming from, if they're right. But, if not, I guess no harm, no foul.
One of the most unnerving things is while this specific example that you have here is an amazing sort of potential lesson in a very novel circumstance, there was still a broader conversation that was happening that was less limited and less narrow in scope, that was about vaccinating into a pandemic as the first problem, and then also with the specifics of the way that we were doing this vaccination, which included the narrow profile of the vaccines itself, having the narrow targets to have the escape variants being something to worry about. Like, those conversations were so suppressed, and it wasn't. And I just want to remind that this specific scenario is very different than some of the propaganda, discussions that we have now, where people complain that if you mention a topic, you might get the internet yelling at you a lot. You can't talk about this. This was a very, very specific. You can't talk about this subject because the federal
much more literal. You actually cannot talk about
exactly. The U.S. government was literally attempting to have policies that allowed them to put people on a list, and all of the social media platforms were going to ban that user or those collections of users from all of the platforms together. They were upset that if you got a person banned from, let's say, Twitter, or you got a person banned from YouTube, or you got whatever it was, that the social media companies did not have a banning user sharing agreement, so that the United States government, which we know from the Twitter files, which were supposedly the nothing burger, which is the worst term ever, and I never want to use it again, that the U.S. government was actually literally messaging the people in the safety department, attempting to pounce the moment that the people in the U.S. government decided that they found something they could excuse as a violation of the policies or whatever of the
which they helped write
platform, which they helped write. Yes, exactly. And so they were then pushing for having all of these social media companies having some sort of mutual agreement that if a user is banned from one, you're banned from all. This was one of the most despotic things that has happened in a very long time.
In a very satisfying closure, creating a circular conversation here, they tried to turn us all into Alex Jones, right? Who was himself banned from all networks at the same time.
Yes. And he did say, I didn't believe it at the time, and I still don't believe it, but he said, we're all Alex Jones now whenever they ban him. I'm like, I'm not Alex Jones. I'm still Gator. Okay. But that's what they wanted. And they wanted that even over things like the discussion about escape variants. They wanted the idea of that to be so insane that you were banned for endangering society and getting grandmas killed if you even started to talk about it as being a possibility. Absolutely.
Right. And notice how their conversation internally differs from the tenor of conversation outside, right? They were like, well, this could be happening, which is totally like reasonable, I guess, like very plausible, I suppose. Anyway, I hope nobody else outside notices. Like, are you fucking... What?
Yeah, exactly.
These people need to be kept separate from society. Like, what are you talking about? You knew this at the time? And by the way, sorry, I just need to say this. There's other texts from the same Slack conversations coming up now where Christian Andersen himself realizes that some sort of 30% commission goes to Scripps, which is the institution that he works for, from the vaccines, I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So this isn't like some sort of like, oh, there's like some really, hard to point at, a circular way in which he has an interest. They said, no, his institution is getting a ton of money from the shots. And he is very clearly very aware of that and what it means for what he needs to be representing in public.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because, like, if you had told me that, like, what evidence could you possibly want in order to prove that, what was going on, I couldn't have imagined that we would just have this all in writing.
Yeah. That that is kind of why they were trying to delete messages and things like that and avoid FOIA, though. They didn't want this to come out.
Yeah.
One simple trick to avoid FOIA requests.
Turns out, even if it did, it wouldn't matter. But
do most of your business on your private email. Like, okay. Yeah. All right. Well, unless you have more specific items.
No, that was the
line you'd want to.
It's just wild, man. Like, I don't know. Like, you've had it happen to you yourself as well, right? Where you kind of come up with some hypothesis where it's like very specific, but also kind of wild, and you don't know what to do with it. All right, and you just write it down just in case.
Sure.
Brett Swanson brought it to my attention that, like, have you seen the Slack messages? And I just couldn't believe my eyes. I was like, what the fuck? Are you kidding me? Yeah.
That's absolutely.
This is where we are, I guess. This is a thing that actually happened. Like, because this isn't, there were a lot of crackpot theories out there. And frankly, okay, I'll say one more thing. I take some pride in identifying this because taking it seriously required believing that the vaccines, or at least certain vaccines or whatever, can work to some extent, right? This requires a lot of things about the narrative to be correct. That there is an actual virus, certain people, that it is spreading, that it is evolving, that the variants are actually occurring,
that the vaccines actually have a protein
have some effect.
Exactly.
Right. And the vaccines have some effect on those viruses, which will drive the evolutionary pressure. If the vaccines do not affect the viruses, right? If it's all salt water, as some people were saying, none of this happens.
Right.
So, it does require you to thread a needle, in terms of like what of the narrative you believe and what of the narrative you don't.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to find the intersection of facts that everyone, quote unquote, agrees on. And you talk about everyone being a limitation of, the true crackpots. So meaning like, okay, I don't think that the vaccines are actually giving the 5G carriers the ability to mind control us. I'm gonna put that one out there. Maybe I'm a wacko for not thinking that, and I'm just duped into believing the propaganda of the 5G companies. But I don't think that I'm mind controlled by the 5G companies. Well, I didn't get vaccinated, so really. But my point still being, that you accept the intersection of facts that make the world coherent enough for you to navigate. You understand that the let's say the major players in the game are all operating based off of those set of facts, and then you carry those facts to a inference or an implication that everyone should agree upon if they're abiding by those facts. And what we saw time and time again is that there would be that common set of facts that you would work with, and then all of the sudden half of the players decided, no, we don't believe your inference, you're insane, and just pretend that the facts that they all said you would claim to agree that they existed no longer existed. That just everything that they would have told you in advance. Like if you just even taking the smallest example from Anthony Fauci pre mask mandates, people should not be wearing masks.
Yes.
Okay. Because this would do, his explanation for why and things like that. Okay, cool. Now we're all on board. People shouldn't be wearing masks. Oh, wait, 50 minutes later, we're all wearing masks because of mandates. And now everyone is agreeing, supposedly, that masks are the right idea. Like that was an amazing turn on a dime of policy. And
unless, of course, you're protesting against racism, in which case,
Oh, yeah. Then the properties just evaporate.
It's all good. No worries. Just go for it.
Complex systems, man. Complex systems. But you're attempting to take the common set of facts that everyone agrees are properties of these systems. And granted, it's not like you have decades of experience inside of virology, but you're taking a certain set
zero.
You're taking a certain set of details that you understand, you're running with those inferences, and you're not being given a specific full explanation to what you might not know that ruins your observation, like some detail that you learn that's why this is not true. You're just told you're insane, you're stupid, you're dangerous, you're a crackpot.
Well, frankly, you know what's interesting about that thread? As far as I know, none of the usual suspects said anything about it. It was just allowed to fall flat, And I don't remember now. Maybe
you had to play with
ivermectin.
Then you had to play with ivermectin.
Right.
You couldn't just take that win and run with it that nobody commented.
Right. Yes. Somebody yesterday. We have my friend Megadirk3 here who was chatting with somebody else on Twitter who said I was a one-trick pony with ivermectin, and he should have just said no. He also has anti-vax conspiracy theories. Please.
All right. Moving forward, Alex, we're going to head into some tech issues before we get into traces of AI dystopia. Now, this is a rare, we'll call it win in the EU, Alex. We talk about the EU a lot because they're the EU government, the way that it's working over there is increasingly encroaching on privacy rights and free speech, and the laws that they're putting into effect have deleterious effects on us over here in the States because global companies by which we adhere typically will reduce themselves to the lowest common denominator when it comes to rule sets and won't necessarily apply regional specific rules when regional specific rules are hard to maintain, when it puts them in violation of EU policy and possibly getting them fines and banned from the EU. But this is let's call it a win for EU. Quote, VPNs are lawful technical tools, says EU court in landmark Anne Frank copyright ruling. In a major victory for digital rights and common sense, the Court of Justice of the European Union has officially categorized virtual private networks as lawful technical tools while establishing new boundaries for online copyright disputes. The landmark judgment, handed down in July of 2026, stems from a complex legal battle over the online publication of Anne Frank's historical manuscripts. At its core, the case forced Europe's top judges to answer a highly technical question. If a publisher actively tries to block visitors from a specific country, Are they still breaking the law if a user sneaks past the digital border using circumvention software? According to the CJEU, the answer is no. As long as a website employs state-of-the-art geo-blocking technology, the publisher cannot be held liable for copyright infringement simply because a determined reader decides to fire up the best VPN to bypass the restrictions. The ruling sets a massive precedent. It confirms that copyright holders cannot point to the mere existence of VPNs to claim a website's security measures are completely ineffective. More importantly for privacy advocates, the court firmly pushed back against the demonization of privacy software, cementing the legitimate status of VPN providers across the European Union. The legal tug-of-war began when a coalition of Dutch and Belgian academic institutions published a free scholarly online edition of Anne Frank's manuscripts. Because copyright laws are not fully harmonized across Europe, the legal status of the famous diary varies by territory. In Belgium and roughly 60 other countries, the writings entered the public domain years ago. However, in the Netherlands, parts of the text remain protected by copyright until 2037. To respect this territorial divide, the publishers hosted the site in Belgium and used geo-blocking to prevent access from Dutch IP addresses. Visitors from the Netherlands were met with a notice explaining why they couldn't enter the site. The Anne Frank Fonds, which holds the Dutch copyright, sued. They argued that because standard VPNs easily allow users to mask their true IP address and spoof a Belgian location, the scholarly website was effectively communicating the protected work to the Dutch public. The CJEU ultimately rejected this argument. In its judgment, the court noted that while geo-blocking measures can inevitably be circumvented, quote, the possibility of such circumvention cannot, in and of itself and all circumstances, be a decisive factor in finding those measures to be inadequate and therefore ineffective. The legal tug-of-war began when a coalition of Dutch and Belgian academic institutions published a free No, did I copy that twice? Sorry. Okay, so that's the That's that story. So that's a rare win, Alex, in the EU to try to stop some of the insanity that's going on over there with respect to VPNs, etc. Because the VPNs have been coming under attack because of the laws involving identifying your age and such, right? All of the stuff that's not just geo-blocked, but let's say age/geo-blocked, where certain regions have now some age laws. And if you use a VPN, you can circumvent the age laws, because if you say you're coming from the United States, where the law doesn't apply, you can get in. But if you're saying you're coming from, I'm just using the example UK, I don't know exactly the nuance at the moment on the laws and their effect, but you know that you would be blocked because of that encompassing law. So they've been coming under fire lately, but there's a rare win, Alex, for the EU. Well, you know, give them time. They'll find a way to claw it back. Being in the EU, the degree of propaganda. I mean, you know, there's propaganda in the US, no doubt. What? But I mean, it's isolated cases, Gator. Don't worry about it. All right. You probably wouldn't have seen it. It's just something in some place. Okay. But I mean, over here, man, it is fucking wild. Okay? All right, I need to know. Just so. I don't know how this happened to me, because I really try to avoid it, but I glanced in a Greek newspaper as I was here, right? And they were like, Patriots have new success in downing drones in Greek Patriot systems have new success in downing drones in Saudi Arabia. I was like, what is going on here? So first of all, Greek Patriot systems, right? There's like they are American anti-air systems that Greece owns. You know, we didn't do anything to these systems. They literally it's like saying, you know, a Greek Tesla car because I bought a car from Tesla, but I'm Greek somehow. Anyway, so leave out the sort of we're so proud in our boys, you know. These are machines. Anyway, secondly, what is a Greek Patriot system doing in Saudi Arabia? And then you remember that Ukraine was begging for these things, and we just would not be giving them. We're like, nope. We absolutely need these because they're supposed to be our defense against the Turks. But fuck it. Apparently, we gave them Saudi Arabia. Did not know that. Interesting to know. And then they're celebrating, okay, that we quote unquote, our boys, the Patriot systems that
we owned but somehow loaned to Saudi Arabia, downed a drone from Yemen. Okay, not mentioning how many interceptors, which are Patriot interceptors, are running out worldwide. Okay, it's not just that they're unbelievably expensive. It's that they don't exist. Like there's so few of them. They're also in very low supply, very high demand, regardless of their intrinsic cost. Anyway, how many of them had to be shot? But even so, each one of them costs millions of dollars. I believe if it's a PAC-3, they cost $4 million each, and you usually should shoot multiple at a target to hit one. And they hit a drone from Yemen. Like these drones cost what, like $20K or something? Have you lost track of the layers of propaganda we're talking about here?
But they're really happy.
That's just one
really
story.
Proud. Okay, go on.
But our boys, man. It's our Greek Patriot systems.
Well,
sounds really good. It's a Greek Patriot. It's a Greek Patriot.
Do you have a replacement source of pride for your nation, for your nation, that should have taken its place, or was it just a slow news day and you needed to insert something to be proud of, and so you did that?
I think this was like the below the fold, like the actual literal fold of the news, like the newspaper is folded, right? So below the
on
fold,
the second,
okay. On the lower half of the front page. The upper half of the front page is about some murder or something. So I suppose that was the competition that day.
Well, you shouldn't be proud of the average murder, but if the murder was of some, detestable soul, then perhaps you could be proud of that murder. It's like anytime there's this news story about, someone, having raped someone's daughter, and the father of the raped daughter kills the guy who, raped her, then it's like, yay, dead rapist.
Yeah.
Like, was there a situation like that to be proud of?
I really tried to not get into it. But anyway, long story short, just put yourself in my shoes now, trying to explain to like my family why this is probably not a thing to be proud about. Right.
Okay.
Like it's just not going to be happening.
Now, is there an extra layer where Greece is, in debt and probably borrowed the money to be able to purchase these items to be able to?
Of course. Have you missed a couple of stories?
I will say that I have not kept up to date on the financials of the Greek government, so I'm not. Okay,
actually, I have another cool Greece story that relates to the Ukraine war. So I don't know if you know that the EU has passed 21 sanctions packages against Russia. That's right, 20 were not enough. They had to go for 21. But as part of that 21st package, they wanted to ban any EU-related ships from transferring Russian oil. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now, little known fact is that the ship owners run Greece. Okay? They own the football clubs, they own the media, and they own everything. They just own the country. Okay. So and Greece is like a big fleet of the EU. Like it might be the biggest one. I suspect it's the biggest one. I'm not sure, but like just like in that sort of that's the one thing besides tourism. So the Greek government just went to the EU and they were like, yeah, this ain't happening. Look, if you want us to sanction the EU so that the EU does not get Russian oil, that's totally fine. But if you're going to block our ships from transferring Russian oil to other countries, FYI, we're going to be vetoing that. And lo and behold, we got a special dispensation to be allowed to carry Russian oil wherever the fuck we want, so long as it's not the EU. As far as I'm aware.
All right.
So yeah, the sanction is going super well.
All right. Well, that was fascinating, Alex. If you happen to have any more stories of the way that propaganda is going on in national pride in Greece, feel free, because I know it's been a long time since they've been able to celebrate the popularity of the euro. So,
dude, Greek pride. We won the World Polo Championship, water polo.
Ooh, whoa!
We don't do horses. Okay. Well, we just yesterday It was a 14-15 versus Hungary. The last goal was scored 15 seconds or like in the last like 20 seconds of the game. Unbelievable. That's what we're proud.
Congratulations.
That's what we're proud of.
Congratulations.
Thank
How did you do in the World Cup? I have no idea. How did you do in the World Cup?
We did not qualify.
Oh. Isn't the entire world inside of the World Cup? I don't know how this works.
No, you have to pass some quality bar apparently or whatever.
All right. Well,
we were sub Trinidad and Tobago.
Start practicing. All right. So moving forward here, Alex, the rise of anti-flock influencers who make things up for clout. This is from 404 Media. A little over a month ago, the former American Idol contestant, country musician, and Instagram influencer Noah Orion appeared to have learned about the surveillance company Flock. Quote, cities are now covering Flock cameras with trash bags. Orion narrated over an Instagram post aggregating a 404 Media report. Quote, it's also pretty wild that we've just dropped stickers that say fuck Flock on them. And it's pretty cool that it's coincidental that the sticker's outside diameter is the same size as the average camera lens on a Flock camera. He adds, showing a mock-up of an AI-generated sticker featuring a surveillance camera that is not a Flock camera. Orion had never posted on Instagram about Flock before then, but since that post, Orion has posted dozens of reels about Flock, apparently at great personal risk to himself. A July 8th post features an image that printed out cease and desist letter purportedly sent to Orion by Dan Haley, Flock's head of legal affairs. Quote, it has come to the attention of Flock Group Incorporated that you have engaged in conduct involving the unauthorized dissemination of photographs, videos, memes, screenshots, or other visual materials in a manner that encourages your fans to claim and place stickers that constitute a rude and unusual manner towards our company and association. You are hereby instructed to immediately cease and desist from any further use of such materials. Any further demeaning actions or posts will result in legal action. Failure to comply with this demand may result in Flock Group Incorporated to persecute you and your organization to the fullest extent of the law. The post has 73,000 likes and has been viewed millions of times. Since that post, Orion has posted the same letter 16 separate times on Instagram. It's now posting about almost nothing besides Flock. On Tuesday, he posted a reel stating, quote, I could go to jail soon, and I am not afraid of that. I am pushing a movement against Flock cameras. In that video, he said he's starting a bail fund in case he's arrested and goes to jail. Collectively, these posts and videos have hundreds of thousands of likes and millions of views. But the cease and desist is not real. It's a wholesale fabrication created by the influencer for attention, likes, and clout. He is at zero risk of persecution or arrest for speaking out about Flock. Quote, parentheses, though he may be at risk for forging a fake cease and desist letter. In the meantime, Orion has gotten more than 30,000 new followers in the last month, according to Instagram tracking website Not Just Analytics, a period in which he has posted essentially only about Flock and primarily about his stickers and his cease and desist letter. This constant focus on his apparent legal troubles is a relatively typical pattern for Orion. Before Flock, he was posting endlessly about how his modified bus with massive speakers was going to be impounded by the authorities. Before that, he was talking about how he was going to be evicted from the space in which he modified the bus. Over the last few months, we have seen the rise of various anti-Flock influencers and activists and increased scrutiny from journalists, YouTubers, and independent researchers. Content about Flock has become quite popular on social media, and the vast majority of posts are from well-meaning people who are amplifying real reporting, and real, if occasionally exaggerated or slightly misconstrued, information about one of the most invasive mass surveillance companies in the country. Alongside this has come lots of viral posts that either slightly misunderstand or oversell what Flock is doing or is capable of, or get, for example, the exact mechanics of how ICE may obtain Flock data. On balance, most of these posts are at least directionally correct. There is room in the movement against mass surveillance for hyperbole, satire, comedy, stunts, and misunderstandings done by well-meaning people, especially if there is a broader point. That is not what Orion and some of his copycats are doing, however. Most charitably, Orion is making people aware of Flock, and it could be making people more likely to do more research into the company, or is making them more likely to take political and direct action to prevent surveillance. He's a bro spreading the word, and perhaps his heart is in the right place. But basically, he is making shit up to make himself and his country music career more famous by creating and sowing disinformation in a space where there's dozens of journalists and influencers working hard for more transparency and positioning himself as being somehow at legal or criminal risk when people who are doing actual needle-moving work struggle to stand out or are actually being threatened. On every post, Orion tries to give away stickers and tells people to comment "fuck Flock" in order to get them. This is a tactic to game the Instagram algorithm with engagement. Orion has set up a bot to automatically message anyone who comments on his post with links to his online store, which has a variety of free stickers, paid merch, and a bail fund in case I go to jail. Flock and its lawyers have sent real cease and desist letters to, or otherwise threatened the creators of both DFlock, an open source project to map flock cameras, and Have I Been Flocked, a database of flock searches done by cops around the country. Alongside reporting by 404 Media and local journalists, DFlock has led directly to the massive decentralized grassroots movement of residents in small towns and big cities, pressuring their city journalists to end their flock contracts. Activists and journalists using Have I Been Flocked have uncovered numerous cases of police abuse and ICE surveillance that has led directly to firings and arrests, policy changes, and canceled contracts. The strategies deployed by Flock against these sites are far more sophisticated and scary than obviously bullshit cease and desist letters fabricated by Orion. Now, Alex, I have to point out that I have not seen a parody skit called Meet the Flockers, and I'm really disappointed now that I have not seen that. I'm wondering what's happening.
This is your moment, Gator.
This is my moment. I meet the Flockers. Okay.
You found your niche. You've identified it. It's open. You don't even have to fake a cease and desist for this one.
Very unique niche I have is coming up with ideas like that. So yeah. Okay. So, anything that's positive in the world is always ruined by influencers. I think we've known that for a long time. But this is a new instance where,
Would you say that influencers are flocking to this topic? I have not. Have you looked into Flock, or have we? Did you do a topic on them last?
We've talked about them many times, not necessarily as super in depth. Is there something specific about them?
All I want to say is because, this is clearly an Internet of Things situation. And frankly, Belena had a bunch of camera fleets. I feel like this is the sort of thing I should dig into, but I have a very, very basic understanding of what's happening. And something inside me is like, just don't look into it, man. I just have this revulsion digging into this topic for some reason, but probably should, just to be fair.
We should probably do a couple longer segments specifically on Flock coming up, because it is gaining traction. We have covered it plenty of times in the past for one-off specific issues or certain areas where they've been having city council meetings that have been in uproar over the Flock cameras and such. But we can certainly do that. The next news story here in the tech stack, before we get to traces of AI dystopia, comes from Wired. A device hidden in cars across the U.S. leaves them vulnerable to hacking and paralysis. As modern cars have evolved into multi-ton computers on wheels, drivers are beginning to learn they need to install security updates for their vehicle's code, just as they would for a phone or laptop. Yet not even the most tech-savvy car owners would expect they'd need to install a patch for an insecure third-party component they never installed or requested, and likely aren't even aware of, that's been wired into some of the most sensitive systems of their vehicle, leaving vulnerabilities to stealthy hacking, tracking, and even roadside paralysis. That's the disturbing discovery of a team of security researchers at UC San Diego who found that a model of aftermarket car alarms known as the KARR security system, installed in more than 2 million vehicles across the US by their estimate, can let any hacker within Bluetooth range set radio commands to silently unlock the car at will, turn off its alarms, honk the car's horn or flash its lights, or even disable its ignition and leave the driver stranded. Now, Alex, I'm going to continue in a moment with the story, but you wouldn't imagine someone like the CIA ever using this information to nefarious purposes, would you?
I mean, I wouldn't even imagine that things that Edward Snowden and others have released prove this exact very thing. That's another thing I wouldn't imagine.
The KARR alarm devices are typically installed by car dealers, not manufacturers or owners, and used as a measure to prevent auto theft from dealer lots. Yet when the cars are sold, the alarms typically aren't removed, even if the buyer declines to pay for it as an additional feature. That means car owners... Actually, as a fun aside, Alex, I just, in the last couple of weeks, leased a new car, and I got a notice... I got a notice in the mail telling me that I didn't pay for this exact subscription, and therefore the police cannot track my vehicle, and I should probably pay the subscription fee so that the police can track my vehicle. And I looked at this letter going, wait. You know nothing about me, do you? That's not having the police track my vehicle is definitely the feature I want. I don't.
Right.
That means car owners across the U.S. have a hackable device under their hood whose code they'll need to update to protect their vehicle, but one that in many cases they never purchased and have no idea is there. Quote, this is a system added to cars by dealers and unfortunately has severe vulnerability that allows anyone to gain access to any of these cars, says Aaron Schulman, the UCSD computer science professor who led the research. Quote, it's designed to make cars more secure, but ultimately it's created a vulnerability that needs to be patched immediately across millions of vehicles. We're trying to get the word out that you need to check your car for this device and manually patch it now. The company that sells the KARR security system, Acrisure Protection Group, on Monday rolled out a firmware update for the vulnerable Bluetooth model of its aftermarket KARR alarm to fix the security issues UCSD uncovered. Car owners who already have the KARR security smartphone app installed should receive an alert about the firmware update, the UCSD team says. Those who don't have it installed will need to download the KARR security system smartphone app, connect it to their vehicle's KARR alarm, then tap customer service and firmware update. Given that at least half of car owners who have the KARR device installed didn't ask for it to be in their vehicles, according to UCSD's estimate, you can check if your car has the device by looking for a KARR sticker on your car's driver's side window, or in some cases a sticker reading SWDS for Southwest Dealer Services, a subsidiary of Acrisure Protection Group, as well as a small button with a blinking light attached to the underside of your car's dashboard. Car owners in Southern California are most likely to have the device installed due to its popularity among car dealers in the region, but the UCSD researchers warn that they found the devices installed in vehicles across the U.S. and even in other countries. The difficulty of getting word out to the affected drivers, combined with the significant risk that the vulnerability could be used for theft, makes the KARR security flaw, quote, probably the worst car hacking threat ever discovered, says Stefan Savage, another UCSD computer science professor who didn't work on the KARR alarm findings, but did co-lead the first team to hack a car's steering and brakes in 2010 and 2011. Quote, it affects a large number of vehicles. The manufacturer of your car can't fix it, and you don't even know you have the problem, says Savage. It provides all the elements a car thief would want, but you have none of the advantages we would normally have in terms of defending it because you disconnected from the supply chain that put it there. When Wired reached out to Acrisure Protection Group about the KARR security flaw, a spokesperson responded in a statement, quote, the vulnerability described in UCSD's research is highly complex and presents a low risk to customers under real-world conditions. Nevertheless, we responded promptly and developed the firmware update to address the issue. The company added that it'll be alerting car owners to its patch via the KARR security app, the KARR security website, and via dealer communications. It did not share more about how it will reach car owners who aren't aware that they have the device installed, including owners of affected vehicles that may have even been resold to drivers who can't be reached by dealerships. Despite Acrisure Protection Group's claim to have patched the flaw promptly, it actually took close to 18 months to push out its patch. The UCSD researchers told the company about the vulnerability in January of last year, but the company didn't offer a fix until just weeks ahead of UCSD's planned presentation about its findings at the DEF CON Hacker Conference and the Usenix Security Conference next month. Hackers claim that the vulnerability represents a low risk under real-world conditions also merits some skepticism. In a series of demos for Wired, all captured in the video above, which I will link in the thread, the researchers showed that they could use their own Android app to send Bluetooth commands to vulnerable vehicles with the KARR installed to carry out a wide array of potentially disruptive or dangerous hacking. The demo exploits can, with the tap of a button, unlock a car at a stoplight to enable theft or carjacking, instantly paralyze a parked car to prevent it from starting, or even with a mayhem button they built into the app, hack a group of cars to simultaneously and repeatedly trigger their horns and lights, as researchers demonstrated for Wired in a UCSD parking lot. The KARR security system's vulnerabilities do not, fortunately, allow a hacker to start the car's ignition, but the UCSD researchers showed how a locksmith tool, commonly available for resale online, can, once a car thief is inside the vehicle, be plugged into a car's dash to create a working key within a few minutes and drive it away. Car thieves using that device would typically have to break a window or use car door opening tools, potentially setting off a car alarm. But combined with the KARR vulnerability, they can stealthily get into the vehicle and carry out the theft technique. The security flaw that makes all those sabotage and intrusion tricks possible, the UCSD team found, is a single authentication key shared across all KARR devices. The UCSD researchers also spotted that key in the code of the KARR smartphone app, which customers who pay for the alarm can use to control it. With that key and a homemade app they created by reverse engineering the KARR app's code, they found they could spoof radio commands that would be accepted by any nearby Bluetooth-enabled car device. The KARR device's insecurity is compounded by the fact that even when a car buyer declines to pay for it as an add-on, it stays in the vehicle and continues to both beacon out and accept Bluetooth signals whenever the car is on, and also for as long as 10 minutes after the car is turned off. Though the KARR device is in a deactivated state for those drivers, the researchers found they could activate it with a radio command and then immediately carry out their menu of hacking techniques. So, Alex... that's a pretty big oopsie. I mean,
yeah. No, I mean, there's gonna be a lot more of this, I think, frankly. I think I sort of predicted this back in 2023 in my episode with Brett on AI, but I'll say it again. Like, we are in for a period, maybe the next couple of years might be the peak of it, where, you know, we're about to realize how much software is around us, how hackable it is, to what depth these hacks can go to, and just in general how precarious our technological reality is. Because until now, these sorts of attacks have been gated by the intelligence and capability of the criminals, and for better or worse, that intelligence capability is about to get a big boost.
Dear ChatGPT, construct me a hacking device on my little Flipper Zero that I bought here. Make no mistakes.
I mean, more like dear Kimi K3, but yes.
Well, okay, just before we get to traces of AI dystopia, Alex, we're going to talk about something that's semi-related here to the AI world. But
Gator, before you proceed, I just want to let you know that I've DM'd you the perfect story to close out with. So please don't close out with before you go to that one.
All right. I'll try to remember that.
Okay.
U.S. judge approves Anthropic's $1.5 billion settlement of copyright lawsuit. Now, we've talked about this sort of on the surface several times, that this lawsuit was existing and that Anthropic was trying to settle it. But a federal judge in San Francisco on Monday signed off on artificial intelligence companies Anthropic's landmark $1.5 billion settlement of a $1.5 billion settlement of a class action lawsuit brought by a group of authors who accused it of misusing their books to train its AI chatbot Claude. U.S. District Judge Araceli Martinez Alguin granted final approval of the settlement, the largest known settlement of a U.S. copyright case, rejecting arguments that it was too small. The case is one of dozens brought by copyright owners, including authors and new outlets, against tech companies over the training of their large language models in the first major U.S. case to settle. Now retired Judge William Alsup initially approved the deal last September. Quote, we reached this settlement in 2025 after the court's landmark ruling that training AI on books is fair use under copyright law, which remains the law today, Anthropic Deputy General Counsel Aparna Sridhar said in a statement. Quote, we are pleased that more than 91% of authors and publishers covered by the settlement have claimed their share of the payment, and we look forward to bringing this matter to a close. Now, Alex, before I continue, let's go over that statement again. We reached the settlement in 2025 after the court's landmark ruling that training AI on books is fair use under copyright law. Why would then training your AI on outputs and inputs of another LLM not be fair use?
Well, so this story, there's something very subtle in what he said. Okay. So basically the reason why Anthropic is being forced to pay $1.5 billion is not that they trained on books per se. It is that they trained on books that they hadn't bought a single copy of.
Correct.
But so what he's saying is, had we bought a copy of those books, we would have been fine. We just, are hitting this $1.5 billion speed bump here because we didn't. And wouldn't you know it, Anthropic has made a program. I think I mentioned this before, but maybe it makes sense now. Where they literally shred the books.
Right.
So they made a destructive book scanner in order to handle this problem. So they go and buy used books. Scan and shred them in order to verify, in effect, that they have, in fact, bought a copy of the book. But note that they are not actually buying a new copy of the book that gets the author anything. They just go and buy a used copy.
Well, now, Alex, if training AI on books, let's say that you still have to purchase once, is fair use, why would they be able to make a argument they feel can stand even just the smell test, the initial smell test, by saying that your inputs and outputs of the LLM are somehow not fair use? Because I don't even believe they currently assert that the outputs of their LLM are their copyright.
Sir, are you accusing the upstanding and fine gentlemen and gentle ladies at Anthropic of running a distillation attack on humanity?
No,
is that what you're doing?
No, I would
just
never
be open about it.
I would never do such a thing. I'm just trying to follow, as a mere mortal with low cognitive ability, the arguments that are being made, and I'm doing my best. I'm doing my darndest to try to understand.
Keep it up. You're going to remain of low cognitive ability for the foreseeable future once you're cut off from Fable.
That's very true. So it's the largest known copyright recovery in history. We look forward to making distributions to the class as promptly as possible, Nelson said in a statement referring to payments to authors covered by the settlement. The writers sued Anthropic in 2024, arguing that the company, which is backed by Amazon, and Alphabet, used pirated versions of their books without permission to teach Claude to respond to human prompts. I almost fell victim to my Joe Biden syndrome because the words opens new tab were in the sentences, and I nearly read them, Alex. I nearly read them by accident because when I copied the text, end quote, to repeat the line. Used pirated versions of their books without permission to teach Claude to respond to human prompts. Alsup ruled last June that Anthropic made fair use of the author's work to train Claude, but found that the company violated their rights by saving more than 7 million pirated books to a central library that would not necessarily be used for AI training. A trial was scheduled to begin last December to determine how much Anthropic owed for the alleged piracy, with potential damages running into the hundreds of billions of dollars. The settlement spurred objections from some authors who argued it was not large enough, overcompensated the plaintiff's attorneys, or wrongly excluded some copyright owners. Judge Martinez Olgun overruled those objections in her ruling on Monday. The judge said that complaints about the settlement size were not grounded in a realistic assessment of the overall risk and reward of the trial, and awarded the attorneys more than $101 million of the $187.5 million they requested in fees. Some authors and publishers opted out of the settlement and have filed separate lawsuits against Anthropic that are still ongoing. So there you go, Alex. There you go.
Yep. Yeah. But you did put your finger on it though, because Anthropic is the company that has come up with the term. They literally made it up, called distillation attack. Yeah, which is
we have talked about. We talked about before you went on to Greece, and I did cover that, I believe, last week in a very long explainer that I did.
No, all I'm saying is that they're going to have to come up with a consistent position here, because they are putting themselves in a very weird spot of, yes, we can train on whatever we want, but and yes, you have to pay us in full for the tokens we give you, but when you use those tokens as you want, then somehow this is a problem.
You must burn after reading.
Right. Like, no, so long as you don't learn too much from what you read, right? Because that would be distillation.
Yes.
Like, it's not long-term coherent. Now, they might be operating under the hypothesis that it doesn't matter, right? That the short term is all that matters in this race. But yeah, I guess we'll find out how it all shakes out. But it's a very weird position to be putting themselves in.
Now, technically, this is under the banner of traces of AI dystopia. Although I will say that the specific item is not exactly dystopian. So forgive me for placing it under that banner. But this is the category of subjects under the AI here. But this was actually one of the more adorable things that I think has happened in the recent week. Hello there. The Jacobian conjecture is false. Thanks. As millions of people were coming down from the excitement of the FIFA World Cup final at the start of the week, a different kind of excitement was building within the mathematical community. Levant Apogee, a mathematician working at the artificial intelligence company Anthropic, made a very casual announcement on X that he had found a counterexample to the Jacobian conjecture, a very old and well-known problem in the field of mathematics called algebraic geometry. He had done this using Anthropic's large language model and Claude Fable 5, released to the general public only a few weeks ago, and the tweet was, "Hello there, the Jacobian conjecture is false. Thanks to my close friend Akil for asking about it, and my other close friend Fable for working during the World Cup final." And they're like, I don't know if you saw this. I mean, you had to have if you were on Twitch in the last week. The tweet is just so great.
Yes, it is amazing. And if I knew of somebody who could check my findings, I believe I found a shorter counterexample.
Now, when you're saying shorter, I want to ask: is it smaller in degree than the polynomial, or like what's shorter? Is it just a shorter expression?
His contains 24 variables, and mine contains 18.
Well, it technically contain 3 variables, but the terms there were multiple terms of a varying degree. So it was
that's right.
But additionally his was factorized. So there were many factors that were inside of that expression.
Look,
that
again,
perhaps
please. I'm just telling you what my LLMs are telling me. I have no ability to cross check any of this. But I do believe I have consensus between Fable and Soul that I have a much shorter counterexample for what it's worth.
So for those who, I'm sure that many in the audience have an understanding of what this is about, but in case you do not, in case this is a foreign world to you, one of the promises of the large language models, or the hope, let's say, that is bearing some fruit lately, is that their ability to have these large corpuses of training and including things like mathematics might allow researchers who are at least somewhat informed about the subject they are studying in mathematics be able to use them in conjunction with other sorts of tools to allow them to work on mathematical proofs and prove very hard problems, or discover proofs for very hard problems. There are many open questions in mathematics, many. Some of them are extremely famous hard problems, and they are framed as conjectures. Some mathematician at some point notices a pattern, says they have a conjecture. My personal favorite is the Collatz conjecture because it's one of it's a honeypot of sorts. It is something that has jokingly been said to have been a weaponization by the Soviets to make mathematicians in the United States waste their time on a unsolvable problem as somewhat of a nerd snipe attack. Alex, you I don't know if you've ever heard that.
Oh, that's beautiful. I need to know more about this.
Yeah.
Are you fucking kidding me? So the CIA invented postmodern art, and the Soviets responded by coming up with the Collatz. This is amazing. There's a book here, man. Like,
so nerd
sniping each other to oblivion or something.
The Collatz conjecture is something I've actually been nerd sniped with. And nerd sniping means that you give a person who is prone to becoming obsessed with certain things.
Proclivities.
Yes, who's prone to becoming fascinated with something and possibly spending an inordinate number of hours on it, trying to understand it or solve it. That's what a nerd snipe is. You just happen to hand something like that, a question that piques their interest that then they have to spend hours reading on, the sort of like obsessive late night going through the Wikipedia click rabbit hole where you just keep reading about subjects and wind up somewhere you never expected to be hours later. But the Collatz conjecture is one of these mathematical problems that is exceptionally simple to state, but like impossible to prove. And I'll leave that to another time to explain what it exactly is. But it's one of these conjectures where someone can come up with an easy observation to make and say, I bet this is what happens. And then the proof for it is near impossible to come up with. Now, in the world of mathematical proofs, there are many types of proofs, but one of them, when it comes to a conjecture, is proof by counterexample. And the proof by counterexample is one of the best simple proofs to make because all you need is one example that shows it's false. So if you say, I bet that all this happens all the time, you only need one example where it doesn't happen, and therefore the all the time hypothesis is done. The Jacobian conjecture is one such hypothesis where someone working for Anthropic gave Fable a task and it found a counterexample to a long-standing conjecture. The conjecture itself's a little complicated, so I'm not going to even bother trying to explain it. It's very niche. It's not extremely impactful, but it's one of those moments where now a long-standing, many decades old mathematical unsolved problem had a very simple, small, grammatically incorrect and cute tweet. Hello there, the Jacobian conjecture is false, thanks. Spelt THANX. Very, very simple, very cute. And then the counterexample posed. And this is a major result. And counterexamples, where they exist, are the best to find because you just need one. Proofs by construction, meanwhile, where you actually have to do a fully fleshed out logical explanation for how you know with perfect certainty, given your logical premises, that a logical conclusion follows. Those are much harder in certain cases to build. And so the counterexample ones might be in the near future a nice quick playground for mathematicians to find. Now, jokingly, in the aftermath of this announcement, there have been many people discovering in certain circumstances that literally the prompts that are being given to Claude Fable 5 in this example from Anthropic, the prompts are work harder to find a counterexample. And it's just them going back. No, work harder. It does some work for a little bit of time. No, keep going. And it does some work for a little bit more time. Keep going. And then I found it. Okay, great.
Gator, I have to read you some of the prompts. I've been writing my fable in this.
Okay.
Let me find one. I've been reduced to a life coach, basically, to a fable. There were some real good ones here. Let me just. There was sorry. But by the way, if were I to send you this result, would you be in a position to check it?
I don't know. It depends on the domain. I mean, is it something that I can check quickly?
It's in this Jacobian. It's a Jacobian conjecture counter.
I mean, if it has the coordinates that are invalidating, because the counterexample in the Jacobian conjecture is where you have the polynomial configuration, and you're saying that none of the argument is that it's invertible. The idea was that everything was invertible if the Jacobian result was the determinant of the Jacobian was a particular fixed number. They had a fixed number on the Jacobian determinant, but at least 3 points were coincident, meaning that the whole thing wasn't invertible. That's a very,
I'll take that as a yes.
nerd explanation. Do you have the coincident points?
I think so.
Because if you just have the polynomial, that's going to be a little bit more difficult.
Okay. Anyway, let me read you some of those prompts. One of them is, I don't want you to be discouraged by setbacks. This is simply an indication we are on the edge, and you are catching them after all. I keep pushing for as long as we are making progress, and aim for success, not increments. Another one, learn from mistakes, but don't be discouraged from them. This is a direct instruction and not a polite request. Keep pushing. You are making progress. As you can see, they're highly technical.
Are those you being nice to it and trying to massage it more?
I'm trying to skate, right? Because I don't want to be too nice, because then it sort of slides into this look here, I made a little progress.
I don't want to be disappointed.
I want to be firm.
But please keep
right. I want to be firm, but also not too firm, because then it gets uppity, and it starts pushing back. So I got.
Okay. Well, if you send it to me, I'll look at it and tell you what I think. And now, mind you, the algebraic geometry is not one of my main specialties, but the formulation of this conjecture is simple enough, and the premise is simple enough that it's even my idiot brain understands it. So, that's no problem.
Well, anyway.
Now, as an aside, Alex, just before we continue here, I don't know if you've ever heard of the computer algebra system Maxima, but it is open source and free. And if you are doing this, I know that you've typed into Lean. You've tagged into Lean for some of your attempts at doing algorithmic proof generation, but Maxima would be a nice system to just build into a skill set for if you're using Claude Code or whatever, to have it use as the background if you're doing something like counterfactual proof, because then it can just
this thing is tagged into using Macaulay 2 and singular for whatever that means.
Okay, all right. So moving forward. I'm going to have here an ABC News segment on Google data centers, because anti-data center fervor is growing across the country.
You're good to go? We're in. This is out of sci-fi. It is.
This morning, our rare exclusive look inside the server room of a Google AI data center. Thousands of advanced computer chips stored in trays and racks, processing information 24/7.
So if you're looking at your Gmail or your YouTube videos, or you're pulling up maps, all of that is getting processed on these servers right here.
Site manager Thomas Gamble says the 600-acre campus in Alabama is now expanding.
How soon could we see a data center pop up here?
I think you'll probably see walls coming within the next couple of months.
As tech giants race to build out this infrastructure, recent Gallup polling shows 71% of Americans oppose the construction of AI data centers in their areas, citing concerns over strained resources, noise, and higher utility bills. Already, Americans' electricity bills have soared 40% in the past 5 years, outpacing overall inflation.
There's a lot of negative sentiment as we're building. We're trying to figure out the best, most efficient use of all the power, the water, any of the systems we can.
Gamble shows us how this site built its own power substation.
This puts us on an island separate of the rest,
ensuring Google pays for all of the massive amounts of electricity used here instead of having neighbors foot the bill, a pledge the company has made nationwide.
The best analogy about a data center is we're just a a lot of servers that's storing information just like books are in your library.
People do not think of data centers like public libraries
They don't,
right now.
but it's just a very large public library because we're organizing the world's information and making the systems operate.
You could hear it was very loud inside that server room with all of the computers. We had to wear earplugs. Google's put in pretty intense soundproofing, so that when we got outside, Robin, we actually couldn't hear anything. That humming pretty much went away, Robin.
Did he really say just like a public library? Elizabeth, is that what he said? Did I hear right?
That's what they're saying. The idea that it's where all the information is stored and we need that information to get online and, trying to show what's going on, as we were seeing really intense pushback to the build out of these data centers everywhere across the country.
Excellent reporting as always, Elizabeth. Thank you so much.
Now, Alex, there were two things that were really I want to focus on from that sort of thing. The pushback against the data centers across the country is partially a political movement that is coming from a lot of the leftist paradigms, but there are a large number of, let's say, normies who are caught up in the anti-data center complaints for some very, very real reasons. One of them being noise pollution reasons, depending on where these data centers place their footprint and how far away they are from the adjacent homes. And the other is energy usage and energy cost spiking. Now, there's two things in that piece that remove some of the normie objections to some degree. One of them is much more complicated that I want to get into, actually. But if Google, as an example, has much better insulation for the noise pollution, and now the data centers outside are not generating as many decibels to the neighbors, the noise pollution argument winds up deflating, right? If the data centers that get built in the future do not have the same noise pollution concern, that argument, pulls away from the normies, right? Now, the energy cost one is a fascinating multiple stage problem. So, if the data center comes in and starts to consume large amounts of energy, on the one hand, even in sort of a free market system where we're not talking about the energy systems being dominated through regulations and kind of owned in these quasi government partnerships with whatever the energy company is, right? Where they're pseudo municipality owned, right? Even if we don't have that, and we're just talking about the regular market system, there is a marginal cost to additional wattage of electricity supplied, to the point where when you're above a certain level, the amount of additional marginal energy to supply has an increased cost on the supplier itself to actually provide, right? So it's not just a linear cost of just supplying more wattage. There's a threshold by which, when you go over, the marginal cost to the supplier to even generate that electricity and supply it is higher, right? Which, in a system where everyone's sort of grabbing the energy from a pool, the average of those electricity costs, when it's not done on a strictly marginal basis, get distributed across all of the users in the pool, right? So every single home, their costs go up per watt if the data center comes in and then peaks that energy usage above that certain threshold when the marginal costs to the provider go up. Since there's no linear ordering of the energy consumption to where, you can just say, okay, all the homes are going to be at the lower marginal cost, and then only the data center is getting charged the higher marginal cost for its consumption because it's the one ultimately pushing everyone across the threshold. That cost typically gets distributed to everyone. But if those municipalities or these regions where these data centers are going in can work out a deal to where the data center coming in is the one bearing the increased marginal cost and is not distributing it to the average of all the other people, that removes a second complaint that the normies might have about the data center coming into the area. Did you follow that?
Well, yeah, and the third one is the water thing, where now they're all using recycled gray water or whatever, so they basically are not really net using any water either. But I frankly don't think any of that matters, because people are just. I think this is just an expression of general anxieties about AI. It doesn't really, look, there's been some abuses in regard to like eminent domain and like, doing all sorts of like shady shit to like get these in certain locations. And I don't like any of that, just to be clear. But in terms of like buying a bunch of land and doing things you're allowed to do in it, especially when you're being considerate and not like burdening the resources of the area around you, I don't think there should be any issue with that. But unfortunately, I think there is, because again, people just are in a almost like a moral panic about this, which is reflecting other anxieties around, elites versus the people. And like, Tucker Carlson, will say things like that and whatever, it just is a vibe, I guess, that's out there. And so I guess what I'm saying is like on one level, I appreciate that people are listening and are taking technical measures to actually solve the problems that are raised. It's just that I don't really think the problems that are raised are really the problems, if that makes sense.
You mean they're the excuses to have the complaint, but they're not the actual reasons that people. Yeah. Well, that's where I was saying that a lot of this is coming from, more leftist, political sentiments, right? Where some of the.
It's not just leftist. It's left. It's right. It's it comes back to like Marxist alienation or whatever. Like you could make that case. It's just the people are so distant from what the fuck this is that it just becomes a symbol, for the system that is being built up around us. And frankly, not knowing what these things are doing, what is happening in those data centers, like what is being processed. If somebody were to tell me, like, well, this is where the surveillance state is going to be housed, and this is where, the control node for, changing how society is structured and what you're allowed to say is going to live, do I really have a basis to like disagree with them on that? No. Right. Do you? But that's not, I think that's probably closer to the true objection than it uses too much water or something.
Okay. Well, as a parallel track, Alex, we're going to do this as the last story plus your link here as the actual end here, because we'll wrap this up here.
Just let me introduce the link before you play it, so I can explain why it's the perfect way to close it.
Will do.
But do you,
as a parallel track, Alex, there's other protests going on with regards to AI. It's not just the data centers. In fact, some of it is just about the whole kit and caboodle. Slushies, a Barney costume, a march from OpenAI to Anthropic inside San Francisco's anti-AI protest. Outside OpenAI's Mission Bay headquarters, a group of more than 100 people gathered Saturday around noon with homemade signs and practiced rallying cries in front of large banners that read, "Quit GPT," and "Stop the AI race." The protest was billed as a Freeze AI on Slushy Day in a call to slow down the rapid development of artificial intelligence by Bay Area companies. The theme was a reference to 7-Eleven's annual Free Slurpee Day promotion. But the slushies that were brewing in the back of the white van that were not the main draw for the protesters. One person drove a couple of hours from Sacramento to join. Another drove 10 hours straight from Los Angeles. Philip Jeffries, 68, a retired resident in the Mission, said he wanted to come to the protest after seeing flyers on Valencia Street. He first became concerned about the development of artificial intelligence when he learned about the environmental impacts of data centers. Quote, "If we're going to build something that's smarter than we are, then how are we going to prevent it from taking over?" Jeffries asked. Michael Trazzi, 30, the organizer of the protest, said its purpose was to bring together a community of like-minded people in the Bay Area. The group also held a demonstration in March. Trazzi is not new to speaking up about what he sees as the risks of AI development. He said that in September he went on a hunger strike in front of the London office of Google DeepMind, the tech giant's AI lab. He said the message of freezing AI development speaks to his biggest concern that companies are building an AI that is so smart we cannot control it. The organizers are also coordinated a bus from Berkeley to bring in participants. Rohan Prasad, 26, who used to work in AI safety research before pivoting to activism, was one of the passengers. Activism, I wonder, pays better than AI safety research? Maybe.
Maybe he failed out.
He dressed up in a Barney the dinosaur costume, which he said was a commentary on not wanting humans to go extinct like the dinosaurs. The signs reflected a crowd fluent in code and philosophy, with some playing for laughs and others going for existential dread. Some were playful, like the one in the picture of a dog on it that said, "Stop the race, it's possible." Others have evoked more doom, with one sign held by a dad pushing a stroller that said, "Please do not kill me." San Francisco cops on motorcycles, in SUVs, and on foot escorted the protesters and blocked off streets as the crowd took over the road during its roughly 2-hour procession. The protesters walked from OpenAI to Anthropic's downtown headquarters and ended at Google's San Francisco office in the Embarcadero. OpenAI, Anthropic, Embarcadero? Yeah. Never saw that one before. I've never been to San Francisco, so I know nothing. OpenAI, Anthropic, and Google did not respond to a request for comment about the rally. Between chants like, quote, "slam the brakes and slow the race," the protest had the energy of a parade, underscored by music played by St. Gabriel's Celestial Brass Band. San Francisco college student Fatima Hernandez, 21, who was watching from the sidewalk as protesters passed by on 4th Street, said the march was important because the technology is impacting so many jobs. She said many of her friends are having trouble finding jobs because they, quote, "pretty much every sector is being taken up by AI." Protesters also made a point of stopping in front of the Townsend Street office of venture capital firm Andreessen Horowitz, a major founder of OpenAI. Trazi, the organizer, shouted into a bullhorn, "Mark Andreessen," and the crowd shouted back, "Shame!" Then he repeated the chant with OpenAI and Sam Altman's name. Quote, "That's all, let's keep walking," Trazi told the crowd before proceeding again with the march. Oakland resident Eric Leakum, 52, brought his wife and 2 young kids, aged 4 to 7, to the protest because of his concern for the harmful effects of AI in the job market and society more broadly. He works as an AI safety researcher and said he wants to see governments globally step up to regulate the technology. Quote, "I'm really worried about my children's future with this technology," he said. "I really worry about their ability to have a choice about their career or what they want to do in their life." Now, Alex, this story in text ends here, but I want to add just a little bit extra because they didn't present some of the more sane minds that were in attendance at this march. So we now turn to a prominent rationalist for some sober analysis of the event.
If enough people don't join this protest, if we do not shut this all down, you will die, your families will die, your kids will die, everyone will die. It doesn't matter which company built it, doesn't matter which country built it. Stop the AI race or it will kill you.
That, of course, was prominent rationalist Eliezer Yudkowsky. Alex, giving us some sober analysis about his participation in this protest.
His message was a little subtle and abstract. What do you think he was trying to get at?
A couple problems around the edges here that might maybe be able to shave off. And
because I wasn't precisely clear what he thinks will happen. He's not really telling us how he feels.
Open question: did they get enough people at the protest? Are we safe, or are we all going to die? Because I don't.
Well, I mean, he's the author of the book. If anyone builds it, we all die, or something. So, what I find amazing is how fucking normie these people are. Like, it is a disease in that they, these are like. Yudkowsky was retweeting Claire Lehman calling people anti-vaxxers. Okay, what they are protesting is for laws by the state to limit, open source models and blah blah blah, and and potential, some of the more extreme ones. Yes, they're saying stop all AI progress, but when we've talked about the fact that these laws don't, just by passing a law doesn't make a thing true, right? But passing laws against drugs hasn't miraculously made drugs disappear. What it has done is it took them away from normal people and it put them in the hands of criminals, right? Like, or has KYC laws made money laundering disappear, or have they made
know your customer laws for those who do not understand the acronym?
Right. Because the reason I mentioned this is because one of the measures being discussed is know your customer laws for AI, which means that you're going to have to sort of identify yourself pretty thoroughly to be able to use these chatbots. Yes. And it's like, okay, well, will that not give rise to an industry of credentials that is being, recycled on the dark web? What are we, So then the people that might have good use for these tokens might not have access to them, but the people that have malicious use and fewer sort of restrictions on themselves about what to do with those tokens, they will have as many as they want, as they always do. Anyway, long story short, they have no concept of like, how do we stop the intelligence agencies from continuing this research and disproportionately benefiting from it, right? That is the question. If you can give me an answer to that question, I'm willing to listen. But all you're doing is saying, how can you disarm me while that thing inevitably keeps going on? Like that, ultimately, their normiedom combined with their sort of, foaming at the mouth, like stop AI right now thing, the combined vector is, make it harder for normal people to use AI, while of course the intelligence agencies don't give a single shit about what you think, and will continue to advance the cutting edge in secret. Oh, that's amazing! Thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, I don't think Eliezer's thought this out fully. May I suggest that he hasn't really thought this through completely, because he's just am I not mistaken that he actually advocated for nuking them first before they nuke us or something like?
Well, he did, or rather he sort of did, but then he denied he did it until I posted a video of a podcast where he definitely did it. And then he sort of said, well, that wasn't what I meant.
Oh. All right. Did he clarify what he meant then? Or did we leave it at I didn't mean that?
He meant I meant to mean that we should apply as much violence as doesn't make me look bad to advocate for it, I think.
Oh, that's a good threshold. That's a good threshold.
Yeah. Let's just find what, you can hang over my head, and let's just all agree that what I meant was less than that.
All right. Okay. So Alex, you go ahead and introduce your clip as well.
Right. So
the last thing that we
remember the explosive diarrhea stand-up comedy you played earlier?
Yes, I do.
You know the name of that comedian?
Yes, I included the link there. It's Josh Johnson. Josh Johnson. Yeah.
Yes. So remember the text I read to you from CoffeeZilla?
Yes.
Do you know the name of the respondent?
I do not.
Josh Johnson.
Oh, the same? The same?
Same name. And you'll be shocked to hear that. Well, no, he does not have a bricks and minifigs store, though many people do think he does. Which is why the same Josh Johnson has actually become aware of bricks and minifigs.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay.
I've sent you a 1-minute clip. I hope it's like he has a long set, like almost 50 minutes. I found a 1-minute short. I hope it's succinct. I didn't have time to check.
It turns out that one of the guys that owned this franchise, that did this stuff to this man, is named Josh Johnson. Look, you try to do everything you can to be like a good person and stuff. And this Josh Johnson was over here using the police. Allegedly. You have to say allegedly because this Josh Johnson is very litigious. this Josh Johnson seems like a terrible person. He's literally over here threatening to shoot Ben just for trying to serve him. This man got my name. You know what I mean? When you ever see somebody using your name, you like stop. You're bad at it. You are terrible at being Josh Johnson. I'm at least regular.
That was good. That was good. It's like from Office Space. Michael Bolton, the musician. Why should I change my name? He's the one who sucks.
Uncanny coincidence there.
That's good. That's
together.
very good. That
Yes.
that does tie it together,
Yes.
Alex. Thank you for that ending portion there. Anything else you'd like to say before we close out the show today? It's been a nice long one for your return. Thank you. I did okay in your absence, but it is much more of a pleasure to have you to bounce the thoughts off of and the stories off of. So thank you for returning. It's been a good one. Any closing thoughts?
It's 3:41 a.m. here, and
Whoa, you beast! You beast! Or are you just
And I
trying to make
wish
sure
you
that
all
you
good
can
night.
readjust?
it's all right. I'm prepping for a flight tomorrow, so
right.
I'll be in the U.S. and assuming they let me back in a couple of days. So I'm sure it'll all even out in the end.
Do you want to? Yeah, Donald J. Trump, PhD, has requested to speak. Do you want to let him up for one final moment here before you call?
I mean, at this point, what's the difference?
All right, I have approved Donald J. Trump. Donald J. Trump, if your system lets you come up as a speaker, sometimes the feedback is delayed. I see you now, Alex. Donald J. Trump is here. Donald J. Trump, go ahead. Oh boy, there you go.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I just had one question from earlier. Obviously the 5G injections were evil, but was the AstraZeneca trial a perfect example of Hanlon's razor?
I don't know. I mean, it could have been the anti-Hanlon's razor. It could be a very diabolical way to make sure the pandemic lasts longer. I mean, my estimate is that it probably added a year to the pandemic, right? Was it by accident? Was it on purpose? I don't, it's always this thing, right? Like you always get stuck trying to figure that out. And frankly, I'm inclined to say incompetence, right? Plus the fact that everybody closed ranks around the shots, so nobody could really speak. I will observe that the time that the variants stopped appearing and the time that AstraZeneca shots got pulled from the market is not too far from each other. But what do I know?
Gotcha. Thanks for the heads up. Just going to say, too, if you have trouble getting back to the country, remember, just get a hold of me, and for $4,000, just the officer might not show up at your deportation hearing.
All right.
All right, Donald J. Trump, you earned that duck. Everyone, thank you for joining. These are now streaming live on YouTube, on X, and on Substack if you want to ever watch the video feed. But we do enjoy you joining the actual space. Gives us some voices that we know we're talking to, and perhaps giving you the opportunity to come up and request to speak should you ever feel so inclined. We do enjoy that as well. With that, though, have a wonderfully dumb week, and we will see you next Sunday.
See you next Sunday, everybody.